This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1927, Comic Talk. Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I am Shane Kelly.
I'm Ian Levinstein.
I'm Adam Murdo.
And I'm Chris Eberly.
Trying to get Martin Junkyard to stand back up.
Well, welcome one and all to the show, and it is indeed Comic Talk time, because it's been a while, and we've got comics, and we've got talk. So it's Comic Talk time, plain and simple. Been a while since we've gotten a chance to sit down and talk just what we love the most, and that, of course, is comic-related media, although last episode was a hoot and a holler, and for those of you who have not checked out our Planet of the Apes episode, please do yourself a favor. It was absolutely worth it.
Oh, that was a...
Yep. Absolutely, indeed. Alrighty, and before we get started here, as usual, a reminder that you folks at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak are what makes this show happen time and time again. We thank you so much for that continued support of the show, however you may give it. For as little as $1 a month, you can support the show, and in doing so, you keep these web episodes coming. You help us renovate the studio and hopefully get that back up and rolling sometime in the not too distant future. Once we get our hands on a new laptop or two, then that'll be back in working order, and a whole bunch of other stuff along the way. And of course, if you can't do Patreon and you still want to donate to the show, you can do so over at comicgeekspeak.com/donate.php at the original PayPal donation link. And for that matter, if you cannot donate to the show monetarily, please donate to the show with your thoughts and opinions on the supergroup or wherever you can. That is greatly appreciated. Leave a review or just let a friend know about the show. That makes as much a difference as anything else. And we thank you so much for that continued support that you give.
Seconded.
Amen.
Third.
Fourth. And I'll form the head. And before we get started, time for an annual tradition to keep rolling. And Mr. Murd has more on the best of 2023 awards.
Thank you, Mr. Levinstein. Yes, folks, it's awards season once again, and that means it's also time for our annual appeal for listener participation from all of you folks out there listening at home. It's time for the Comic Geek Speak Best of 2023 Awards, the coveted Jamies, and that means it's time for us to give out largely unofficial and insubstantial token awards to whatever we think are the best in comics creators and publications of the recent year 2023. And for that, we always like to reach out to you, the listeners, to talk back to us and let us know what you have enjoyed most in the way of comics of the previous year. We issue Best of Awards in 16 different categories, which I will recite now on the air and never again until the official nominations episode. Here are those categories. Best New Hero or Hero Team to make their first appearance in 2023. Best New Villain or Villain Team to make their first appearance in 2023. Best New Ongoing Comic, the first issue of which must have shipped in 2023. Best Limited Series, the last issue of which must have shipped in 2023. Best Single Issue or One-Shot. Best Cliffhanger or Moment. Best Storyline, either an arc within a series or across multiple series, such as a crossover. Best Sleeper or Surprise Hit. Best Ongoing Comic. It doesn't need to have begun publication in 2023, although it could. All that we ask is that it have published one issue within that year. Best Graphic Album, whether an original graphic novel or a reprint collection. Best Writer. Best Artist. Best Writer/Artist, one person who does both. Best Color Artist, Best Letterer, and Breakthrough Talent of 2023. And a special stipulation there, this cannot be anyone who has won this award in a previous year. So please, much as we love Tom King, no nominations for him. He's got the award. He's done.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Those are the 16 categories. If you, as a listener, would like to participate in the Best of Awards nominations process, what we would like you to do is type up an email and suggest one and one only nominee for each, as many of these categories as possible, but at least 8. Any ballot you submit that contains nominees in fewer than 8 categories will be considered a stub and discounted. Type it up. Send it to the address bestof, B-E-S-T-O-F, at comicgeekspeak.com, and the deadline for that will be 11:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, March 3rd. That gives you the better part of a month to think about this, folks. I know this is not easy, reflecting back an entire year's worth of comics. I know it takes me a good long time to get my nominees together, but just fill out your ballots at your leisure, send them in before that time, and even if you're a couple hours late, I'll probably still count it. And I will tabulate all of your nominations, and whoever or whatever gets the most listener nominations in each category will be entered on the ballot as the official listener nominee in that category, along with the nominees provided by all the participating hosts of the show. Which is the folks you see on your YouTube screen or you're hearing in your ears right now. And then sometime shortly after March 3rd, we'll have our official nominations announcement show where each of us participating geeks will give our nominee in each category, and the listeners' nominees will be announced. And then we will have a complete ballot, and a couple of weeks later, we'll have another round of listener voting to determine which of the given nominees in each category you folks think most deserving the Jamie Award. And then we'll announce the winners, and that's always fun. So there's your announcement, folks. Get those ballots together. Send them in to bestof@comicgeekspeak.com before the stated time. And we're going to have a good time, as always, listening to what you folks listening have thought were the best comics had to offer. We always get some great recommendations for reads from that. And I know those of you listening at home usually tell us that you do, too.
Yep. Absolutely. And I just finished Do a Powerbomb a little while ago, and that pretty damn close to sweeping the best ofs last year, and very, very happy to have that recommended by our listeners. Looking forward to some great recommendations this time around as well.
And always thanks to Murd for helming. This is one of the best things we do all year.
That's my pleasure. I always like to play the role of PricewaterhouseCoopers and just compiling. It's good fun. It's good anal retentive fun.
And so far, we've never announced the wrong winner.
Yeah, that's
right.
True. That's true. Yep. And even having to add that stipulation of you're only new once was like the one big change we had to make once upon a time. Was like, no, you're only a new talent once. It defeats the purpose of new if you're a new talent 2 years in a row.
There's only so many times you can break through. I mean, there's just the one layer for the through breaking. So
Yep.
Once you're through, and that's it. No more awards for you.
Absolutely the case. Yep. All right. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get to some comics news. And side note, those of you listening to this, you're listening to this about a week in the future. We're recording this on February 7th. We have a little bit of a backlog here. It's nice to have that, but sometimes when you announce news, it's possible that things may have changed by the time this comes out, or at least more information might be available by the time this episode comes out. There was big happenings in the world of comic book art this week, specifically with Cadence Comic Art. Now, for many years, and I mean, we're familiar with it here on the show. We've talked to people behind Cadence. We've had artists from Cadence on the show, and they've been around for many years, but strange happenings are happening over at Cadence Comic Art, as many an artist over the past week, including the likes of Mike Norton, Dave Wachter, Jamal Igle, Gabe Hartman, Jeff Lemire, Declan Shelby, Zoe Thorogood. The names go on and on and on of people that were associated with Cadence Comic Art are now no longer associated with Cadence Comic Art. And really the only information that we've received from any of these artists is the boilerplate of, unfortunately, I never thought this day would come, but I am no longer a part of Cadence Comic Art. I'm working out details for how I'm going to sell my art in the future. If you have any standing orders with Cadence, you have to deal with Cadence because they were through them. But anything in the future, these artists are going through their own means after years of working with Cadence. A note on that as well, that one of the men behind the scenes of Cadence for many years, Andrew Chrisman, also has left Cadence as of January 29th, and is trying to help tie up quote unquote loose ends with the company in order to help, whatever artists are leaving, perhaps get a hold of artwork that may be standing, so that they can distribute it themselves, or, existing orders, hopefully make a deal with that one way or the other. But it's unfortunate to see something like this because, as said, we've been fans of Cadence in the past, and obviously they had some of the biggest names in art, but something's happened behind the scenes to make things very much not lucrative for the artists anymore. So sad news up front on that. The other thing that's of note is that Cadence has a very strong presence at comic conventions.
Yeah, that's right.
Specifically, like, I know that at New York Comic Con, there were entire aisles devoted to Cadence Comic Art and said artists associated with them in previous years. So this may also very well affect how you see your comic conventions and the artists associated with them moving forward in upcoming years.
Wow.
Yeah. Interesting news up front here. And obviously, if we get more information on it, we'll let you guys know. But yeah, it's strange things afoot, to say the least. But, really all we can do is just send our support to the artists that we know that are affected by this. We always support Norton here and Dave Wachter and, anybody else of the like who is affected. We hope that you're able to get your own thoroughfare of artwork a-rolling sooner than later.
Yeah, indeed.
Yep. All right. From there, onward to, I think, some media conversation. As I know, both Chris and Murd saw what is essentially the final DC movie of an era. And that, of course, is the latest Aquaman movie that came out, Aquaman The Lost Kingdom. There will probably be a couple of spoilers here, by the way. So if anybody who hasn't seen it, you might want to tune out and then tune back in once we're done. I'll make sure to put the timestamps in there. But we'll start off with, general thoughts at first from the two of you. Shane and I have not seen it yet, but frankly, I'm waiving my spoiler rights here. If you guys give away any spoilers, I'm perfectly okay with it. I am not invested in the movie. I fully admit that. I will see it eventually, but it is... I had the opportunity to see this in theaters, and I chose not to. That's how little interest I had in it from the reviews and from the trailers. But Murd, curious to see what your thoughts were on Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom.
Well, it's hard to spoil, Ian, because there's really not a whole lot of plot involved. And as Chris observed before we started recording, if you've seen the first movie, you've seen a lot of the same beats that are found in the second one. It's got a little bit more fan service in it. We were talking about some of the cool bits of Aquaman lore that were included. Shane wanted to know if Storm the Seahorse was in it, and yes, Storm the Seahorse is there. We don't really find out how Aquaman got him. He's just kind of there in the opening sequence. And also, Secret Agent Topo, who is... stealth cephalopod. He's an octopus, an intelligent octopus with he's got some of the more amusing moments in the movie. I might even go so far as to say he's the breakout star of the whole thing. He helps Aquaman on his little side missions as he makes his way through the plot. And Topo has some really I like the sound effects that make Topo's dialogue. It's good Foley work there. I'll say that much for it. And the usual eye-popping visual effects, blah blah blah. But the story is basically Black Manta is back, and this time he gets himself mixed up in some black magic. He finds an ancient trident that ties into, a name you'll recognize, Ian, Kordax. Yeah, from Peter David's segment of the Aquaman mythos.
Yep.
He's the bad guy here, but Kordax is basically Sauron here. It's some striking parallels to Lord of the Rings. And Aquaman needs to try to suppress Black Manta and his possession by Kordax and the danger that Kordax and his unliving legions will be unleashed on the oceans. And at some point he just kind of randomly decides, I'd better break my brother out of jail to help me do this. And it kind of apropos of nothing. I mean, of all the allies he could seek out, he decides, I'm going to go do this because then this can be a fun buddy movie kind of thing. So he goes through the motions of breaking his brother out of jail in the middle of the desert where he's being guarded by these a race of monster people called the Fishermen, and Topo helps him do that. And then he and his brother go to an island of radioactive mutants for some reason. And, I think that's where where the bad guys got his orichalcum mine, because orichalcum is like this magical radioactive mineral. I think its roots trace back to old Arion, the Immortal comics. I'm not sure, but and of course, eventually Kordax manages to break free. He nearly possesses Orm at some point, and Aquaman destroys the trident by throwing another trident at it. And there's big green glowing explosions and underwater, and it ends with Aquaman announcing to the United Nations, "I'm Aquaman! Woo!"
Yep.
That's a direct quote.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure.
Wow. Okay.
And the post-credit scene, the very last image from this phase of the DCEU is Ocean Master on vacation in Europe someplace eating a cockroach.
Okay.
That is the note on which this ends.
Wow.
That's weird.
Let me say this.
It had its amusing final
sure.
word here. It has its amusing moments. The effects continue to please. I hope the people who put them together were paid well for them. Although, there's no guarantee there. But all told, I went to see the thing on my birthday at a discount afternoon matinee. I still felt like I overpaid.
Oh, jeez.
All right, Chris, the floor
Thanks,
is yours.
brothers. So one thing I want to say right off the bat. Anyone who hasn't listened, who's interested in Aquaman, if you've not listened to the classic Aquaman Spotlight,
Yes.
helmed by Peter, which is a masterful spotlight, because Aquaman's history, like Hawkman, can get pretty convoluted. I listened to that before seeing the movie, which helped me because, as Murd said, there are some elements of Aquaman's history they do put into this film and apply in different ways. So that was interesting. But I enjoy the spotlight a lot.
By the way, episode 840 from May 5th, 2010, Spotlight on Aquaman.
Well, I enjoy the spotlight a lot more than I did this film. I'll say this. So the first Aquaman movie I thought it was fun. I mean, I think it made like $1 billion or something like that, the first one.
Really?
Yeah.
And the look of it, I really like. I mean, he's a very charismatic actor. I like him in the role. So, I enjoyed that first one for what it was. It wasn't great, but it was fun. The problem I have with this second film, and Murd did a masterful job summarizing it, it kind of was like the same movie. And I didn't really feel like when a good sequel to me, it's both reassuring, but it's also advancing things in new directions that just keep you more engaged and wanting to come back for more. I mean, Empire Strikes Back is like the gold standard for that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
Right.
So it looked good. Like Murd said, the effects were great. Like the whole undersea world they created, the different creatures. Black Manta remains one of the greatest page-to-film costumes ever, I think, in any comic book film.
Agreed.
But I just found it very flat. I like Jason Momoa as Aquaman, but it just like Murd said, you watch it and then you leave and you kind of forgot everything you just saw. It didn't really leave much of an impression. They do try to emphasize the fact that he's now a father. There's some joke scenes about that, and then like he's also trying to be a king, and Mara's not in it that much, which disappointed me because I liked the chemistry they had in the first film. It was just I guess for me, superhero films, I think, because they've been such a saturation of them, I think we need to see from both companies, but especially DC. Let's take this into some new directions. Let's rejuvenate things. Let's do some stuff that maybe people aren't expecting. This is like the same film, and the first film was fun, but if you're going to do the same film again, and the first film was just kind of a light film to begin with, it's not gonna. It just left no imprint ultimately.
And so sort of the big impact for the first film for me was that it was just brighter, happier,
Yeah, it looked
funner.
it looked like Aquaman's
Yeah.
comic book world. You get that again, like Murd said, but
But
I'm old fashioned. The script's not firing my thrusters. I don't really care how good it looks.
that's a shame.
So
And it kind of is a shame because as I said, as a capper to a universe, essentially, you would at least hope that there would be some sort of logical conclusion one way or the other, or at least something epic. And we were kind of teased that the Flash would be that, and in many ways, whether you enjoyed that movie or not, it was not a capper to a universe, even with the multiversal elements of it all and the time travel and whatnot. Like its universe reset was not what we were expecting it to be when initially teased. And then when Aquaman was set to come out, if memory serves, I think, wasn't Aquaman initially supposed to come out before The Flash?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and then with all the delays and whatnot, it wound up moving in the pantheon, and then of movies coming out, and then of course, at the time, we thought that there were still going to be other DC movies. Henry Cavill had signed back on as Superman. Black Adam had come out, and there were hints of there possibly being a Superman Black Adam sequel of some sort, whether it be Man of Steel 2 or otherwise, and all these other things. And now this is just sort of like the lame duck.
Yeah.
That was finished and had to be released somehow. And they released it, and it tanked.
yeah, how poorly did it do?
Sure as heck didn't make a billion. I'll tell you that much. Aquaman Lost Kingdom, looking at its Wikipedia entry at the moment, with a budget of 205 to 215 million. It did make a budget back. It made 424 million, but that's less than half of what the first one made. Which I think says a lot, not just because of the quality of the movie, but also movie going in general. Like, movie going ain't what it used to be, unless you're giving us a reason to be at the theaters, like a beloved character that finally has a movie that turns out to be fantastic. Barbie, as an example, a franchise that literally everybody's familiar with, that turns out to be like a stupendous movie and makes a gazillion dollars. Like, it's making a gazillion dollars because it is a movie to go see.
I still have to watch that.
You really need to see it, Shane. It's well worth it, in my opinion. I think now you need a movie that is worth it. We talked about that with the Marvels, how the Marvels is a perfectly cromulent movie, in my opinion, but it's not. It's an easy to wait for Disney Plus movie in the end. And in the world of streaming today, that's the decision that a lot of people are going to make.
Which I think it comes out on Disney Plus today as we record this.
Yes, I was watching Disney Plus earlier today, and it is available. So anybody who did not see it, is now available for watch on there.
It is such a shame about what's happened with DC movies, because, like you said, Flash was really, I thought, supposed to be the at least the last one, the capper, the conversion to the next thing, or just the conversion from what happened already to what was going to happen for all of the shakeup for a new regime to control DC movies. But if you look at it, you have Wonder Woman 2, Aquaman 2 that have both kind of tanked in a lot of ways. You have the Flash movie, which I did watch it again just the other day. I wanted to watch the Michael Keaton parts. I ended up putting it on and watched the whole darn thing over an evening, on and off as I was doing different things. But I loved watching the Michael Keaton parts again. That's the best part of the movie for me. Yeah. It just, my disappointment in what's come out from DC lately is just, I can't even overstate how disappointing it is that all these characters that I know myself and so many others love, they're serviceable movies to a certain extent, but I don't feel like we've ever gotten what I am expecting from a DC movie in any of this since Man of Steel to this last one. Yeah. It's again, serviceable movies. Some of them are fun. I've watched almost all except Aquaman. I've watched all of them so far. I will watch Aquaman. It's just it doesn't give you that invigorating feeling like you got when you started watching at least wave 1 and 2 of the Marvel stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, look, at least we got, green pants and gold top Aquaman. Like I know that was essentially made so at the end of the last movie, but I'm glad that we at least get more of that here. And it actually looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So
I love him. I like him. I think he's great as Aquaman. I just think like Shane said, serviceable. One thing I would say, and I think Shane's making a great point here.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I always go back to the gold standard. Superman 1978.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, they had very different levels of effects back then, but that movie captured the mythic grandeur of that character.
Yeah.
And the DC characters, like especially the core, these are iconic. They're different than Marvel characters. There's a difference because I think in some ways they're almost on a more mythic, elevated plane.
Yeah.
And I think if you capture that wonderment with some of these characters, I think you can go somewhere. I mean, there's a reason why that movie Superman is still beloved. I mean, I still think it's one of the best comic book adaptations still ever made.
Right.
I agree.
And you have a perfect, synthesis of script,
Mm-hmm.
direction, and of course, the 1 in a million actor they got to play Superman.
Oh, absolutely.
So, for me, again, I'm old fashioned in a sense, but for me, if they return to that type of tone,
Mm-hmm.
like if you're going to do like another Justice League film, it shouldn't be like the Avengers. It should be a totally different tone.
Yeah.
Like when you see the Justice League, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna run up on the street and slap them on the back. No, you're in awe of them because they're basically like gods.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're not humanized, but there's you guys know what I'm saying? There should be something there, but I think most of these films have just not captured.
And I think that's a major problem with DC as a whole, is exactly what you said, Chris, and why I feel like Marvel's movies translated so much better to the screen is that for the most part, Marvel's characters are not gods. Even Thor, the god, has his.
They call him a space Viking.
Exactly. Come on, he's a god. But he also he had his human half. That's Marvel. Exactly. Right. That's Marvel there to a T. For the most part, you're dealing with a lot of invulnerabilities in DC. You're dealing with higher echelon strength of character in strength. Like the perfect example, the Justice League cartoon back in the day.
Oh, it's a great.
Great cartoon, but when it first started, they dumbed down Superman's power set. And by the time season 2 came around, they learned their lesson because people were like, wait, why is Superman all of a sudden, not able to take a laser blast? Like, come on. He was able to before. Now he's not. It's hard to find flaws in characters that are nearly flawless with their power set. And you have to find the humanity in the character in other ways, not taking away their strength.
And let me emphasize, and I've said this before in the program, and I'll reiterate it because I think it's very significant in terms of this discussion, is that the moment where they got that right for me was the first Wonder Woman film.
Yeah.
When she steps out of the trench.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And I mean, I remember I went with our friend Danielle. She nearly wept, like because you saw the awesome power of Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And like she played the character wonderfully, but there's just not enough of that. I don't need to see Batman being emo and pouting and whining. Like I need you need to show the mythic grandeur of those iconic characters. And they just, maybe they're afraid of it. Maybe they don't understand. Maybe they don't know how to do that. I don't know. I'm just conjecturing here, but.
And I do think the closest that we got to any kind of what I would even start to glimmer as a Justice League movie was in the Flash, when you had Batman, Wonder Woman, and Flash all together for 30 seconds.
That was fun. It's a lot of fun.
And they did some of it right. Flash was still a little bit too goofy for me in that part, but it still wasn't bad. It still made sense. And you thought, oh gosh, what really could have been if they would have put their minds together and came up with a story for these characters that they build up to really tell. And really blow up the DC universe to the grandeur it should be.
Well, let's see what happens with the new direction.
I know, but boy, oh boy, man, get moving. I'm getting old.
Out of
10-year plan, man. 10-year plan, man. I'll be in my mid-60s till I see the end of that first 10-year plan. Come on.
Out of curiosity, what did they do with Willem Dafoe's character in this? Because I know he's not in it.
They mentioned that he died. Was it a plague, Murd? They said Volko died. I don't remember what it was. A virus,
in a Monty Python kind of way. Plague. Just a little bit of pestilence.
No recollection.
Yeah, they just said that he died.
Fair enough.
I didn't even remember that Willem Dafoe was in the first one.
Yeah, I don't remember. I want to say a sick illness, but I can't be sure about that.
Well, Willem Dafoe as Volko was the mentor character in the first movie, where for instance, he's the one who pulls Aquaman into the room underwater that he's able to breathe in and stuff like that, and helps him plan and whatnot, and teaches him his Atlantean ways. But I knew he wasn't in this because he was busy with other projects, one of which being Spider-Man. So that's, that took precedent, I would think, for a few minutes. Yep.
And that certainly served him better.
Yes, definitely the case.
Now, I'm sorry, and please go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Who saw Echo?
I didn't watch that yet. I have to start.
I saw Echo all the way through.
Me too. So I won't spoil then.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, I think you share my view that one of the most exciting Marvel series in quite some time.
100%. 100%.
I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. They really explore effectively the character, and they really give you a very human story.
Mm-hmm.
And I was they're short. So I was, when I had COVID, I watched it in one day. But again, it to me, this is like really good Marvel street story. Like, there's a power that's involved, but it's really about this girl, her family history, choices that were made by her and by people around her, and the consequences of those choices. And the other thing I'll say, every time Vincent D'Onofrio is on screen as Kingpin,
oh my God,
I am the happiest Marvelite that's ever been.
Yeah,
it is without, for me, out of all this multimedia we've had over the past several years, one of the best representations of any comic character put to screen yet. Again, and they really explore, like, right from the Daredevil comic, his relationship with Echo, the consequences of that. And he is so frightening because there are scenes where, and you guys know this from the comics and from the previous Daredevil show, where he loses his temper.
Yes.
And because, again, he has no superpowers, but he is one of the most terrifying.
Oh yeah.
And brutal villains that they've really put to screen. He's amazing.
Can I also share that we finally get the iconic look?
Yes. Yep.
Of the Kingpin in this series, the white suit with the black shirt underneath, like it's classic Kingpin all the way.
Yep.
Does he have the jewel-headed cane?
Yes, I believe he has a cane at one point. I'm not sure if it's jewel-headed. He did definitely have a cane at one point in the show, due to reasons that I won't get away from.
And the other great thing about his performance is that, again, without spoiling anything, there are moments where, he's sitting down to talking to someone or whatever, and he's so calm, but he's calm, but at the same time, he's so utterly menacing, even though he's not necessarily doing anything.
Yeah.
There's Ian know what I'm talking about. There's a scene with a translator for the deaf. And then there's a scene where he wants to have dinner with Echo. And the tension is so powerful. Yeah. Because you're like, what is this guy going to do? It is a towering performance. And last thing I'll say is they're setting up Born Again right from Echo. And I am on tender hooks waiting for this.
Yes.
I can't wait.
Does the series offer an explanation for what happened at the end of Hawkeye when it seemed like Kingpin
Yes.
had been
Yes,
shot
it
at
does.
point blank?
Oh,
Okay, good.
absolutely.
Yeah, yes, it does. Yeah, and it will get into that. What I'll say as my thoughts on it, and again, keeping it spoiler free, is that, and I mean this. This is the closest to the quality of the Netflix show
Yeah, I agree.
that we have gotten
Absolutely.
so far from any of these Disney Plus series. Because you know that we're going street now, with this Marvel Spotlight that they've introduced.
That's right. They call it Marvel Spotlight. Yep.
Where they're trying to get more grounded stories and whatnot. I've had some people say that after the first episode, they're like, well, I felt like I would have had to have watched, 2 series to fully understand what was going on in this. And it's not a spoiler to say, the first 6 minutes of the show essentially are recap. Yeah. For anybody who hadn't watched that, you get what you need from the story. They tell you enough about Echo to know who is. They tell you enough about Kingpin to know who he is, and the story goes on from there. I will also say that we are in a renaissance for native storytelling right now. In Hollywood and elsewhere, with Killers of the Flower Moon being a Best Picture nominee, and Echo telling the story that it tells here. I'm going to talk about the What If series a little bit later on as well, and they have an amazing native episode that in some ways ties into the Echo series, but also itself is a bit of a standalone, just depending on how you want to interpret it, but. I was thrilled with the interpretation of this. And interesting tidbit, I don't consider this to be a spoiler saying this, that Kingpin himself, even though he considers Echo to almost be a daughter to him, he never bothers to learn sign language.
No, it's a great moment. Yeah.
And to me, that says that that's beneath him.
I was just going to say, to me, that just tells me it's beneath him to do something like that.
Exactly. There's always an interpreter there whenever they're having a conversation, so that he can, that she can interpret the sign language to Maya, and Maya's sign language could be interpreted to him. And he even goes as far at one point to even get some sort of nanotech cuckoo crazy earbud that translates things rather than him learn sign language. It's just. It boggles my mind, but it's so Kingpin, it hurts.
Correct me though, and I want to go now that you say that, I want to go back and look at it in Hawkeye, because I thought in a couple scenes he did sign to her in that series.
He might know some basic signing, but not enough to carry on a full conversation.
And I go ahead, Shane, please.
And it would make sense to me that if you want this to be his, kind of portray him this way, it makes sense to kind of forget that and ignore that it ever happened.
Right.
And from this point forward, he does not know it, period.
And I would say to piggyback what Ian was saying, if you haven't seen Hawkeye, solid show, and it's definitely, I definitely would recommend seeing it if you want to get the full effect before you watch Echo. But like Ian said, they do an excellent job of summarizing what happened in Hawkeye.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to mention, the actress playing Echo is tremendous.
Oh,
she's never acted before.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
She's actually deaf in real life, and she's actually doesn't have a real life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great performance, a very impressive, and her scenes with the Kingpin especially are wow.
Yeah, her name is Alaqua Cox, and again, first introduced in the Hawkeye series, and now here with this, and I don't know whether or not she's going to wind up showing up in Born Again at any point, but this got me back into the Disney Plus shows in a lot of ways. I enjoyed Loki for what it was, but that was season 2 of Loki. I knew what I was getting at.
It looked very pretty.
Yes, and the story that it told, you're either into it or you're not. Quite frankly, I was looking for American Doctor Who, and I still got it. That's even though Loki himself is not American, whatever. This is as close to a American-made Doctor Who series as you could possibly get.
I can agree with that.
they explain that in season 1, and then season 2 just even goes even further in that. But yeah, this is a well-grounded Marvel series that is absolutely worth giving a shot, one way or the other.
And befitting Marvel Street tone, just to let people know, it's brutal. Like there's brutal violence in this series.
Yep.
And without spoiling, there is a magnificent cameo.
Yes.
That leads to a fantastic confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
and that cameo essentially puts back into continuity everything that happened before, and I'll just leave it there.
I think Ben, my oldest, has watched What If and Echo and is almost through, if not through, Daredevil season 3, which I'm behind on all of that. So I have a lot to catch up to do.
Yeah, it's tons of good watching to do. Quite frankly, it's not an immediacy, especially What If you could do whenever you want, really. Like it's a good fun time. In fact, you know what? I might as well just discuss it here since we're sort of piggybacking into it. Season 2 of What If, I feel like season 1 went serious. Season 2, for the most part, goes ridiculous, but I'm not mad. I am not mad. And there are a couple of episodes that are way more serious. But like, for instance, season 2 has Die Hard in Avengers Mansion as one of the episodes, where it's Christmas at sorry, not Avengers Mansion, at Avengers Tower, and Happy Hogan is trying to put together the party and all that, and then people break into Avengers Mansion while all the heroes are off doing their own thing, and Happy has to deal with the consequences. And it's great. There's a What If Nebula Joins the Nova Corps is the first episode of the second season. And that is essentially Blade Runner. It's a very space cop story, reminiscent even to some Green Lantern stories that have been told over the years that are more street and detective like and less in the powers. But we have Howard the Duck show up in it. Once again, masterfully voiced by Seth Green. Groot and Korg once again, played by Taika Waititi in this, and it's terrific. But I think my two favorite episodes of the entire season are What If Peter Quill Attacked Earth's Mightiest Heroes, because that creates essentially the Avengers in the 1980s instead of the Avengers in the 2000s. So you have a Avengers team consisting of Bill Foster, Peggy Carter, as the liaison, as the Sam Jackson, essentially, King T'Chaka of Wakanda, Bucky Barnes, Dr. Wendy Lawson, aka the Kree from the first Captain Marvel movie,
right,
and eventually some other names that you may recognize along the way. But it completely. Oh, and Michael Douglas reprising his role as Hank Pym on the team as well. But it's so cool, and it creates its own Avengers mythos.
I can't wait to watch these.
It's so well done. But the one that matters the most, especially with Echo, is What If Kaori Reshaped the World. That is the native episode. It's a world where essentially the Tesseract explodes at one point and lands on Earth and winds up creating almost like a life spring of sorts that leads itself to another world that's inhabited by Mohawk Indian. And Kaori is one of these. She winds up getting powers through the process, and it's a really well done tale with shades of Avatar, Blue Avatar, not the Last Airbender, and also Native American lore and conquistadors attacking, and it's really incredibly focused in its narrative. in ways that the What If show has not always been able to pull off. And plus, they do 1602 this season. Like it's
wow,
tons of stories you may recognize and its own takes on What If that they're able to go off and do whatever they want this season, and it shows. So
do they tie in an arc like they did last season?
So there are shades of that. There is a sequel episode to Captain Carter in this season. So you're essentially getting the Winter Soldier in her world. It plays out in similar fashion to the Winter Soldier movie, only instead of Bucky, we're dealing with her Winter Soldier essentially. And there are shades of that series as well that do pop in from time to time throughout the season, especially in the last episode where that matters the most. But yeah, definitely give it a shot. It's already been renewed for a third season, so there will be a third season of What If that's already in production. They already shared a scene from that season, which is a buddy cop episode involving Winter Soldier and Red Guardian. Yeah, so essentially, it must be a world where Winter Soldier was freed earlier than he was, and Red Guardian's running around the deserts of what looked to be either like New Mexico or Arizona with him. And at one point, they wind up being stopped by a SHIELD agent, Bill Foster, who's trying to stop them and get them back home to where they're supposed to be. And it looks like it's gonna be a lot of fun. Good times all around. Any other media that you folks have ingested over the past couple of weeks?
I just want to make a proclamation. Out of my devotion to this show.
Yes. Oh boy.
I am going to see Madame Web.
As am I. And
I will give a field report.
Yeah, I'm curious to go see that myself because some of it looks really good.
Shane, you're a fountain of optimism.
The costumes look fantastic. I've watched some interviews where the actresses playing these characters are really kind of invigorated and excited about it.
All right.
I don't know if good is exactly the word that I would use, but it certainly intrigues me, and I don't know if it intrigues me in a good way or a bad way.
We'll find out.
I'll put it this way: I have yet to ever watch Morbius or either Venom.
Me neither.
I'm a little bit more excited for this than those.
I'll tell you what, Shane. I've described Venom this way on this show before, and I will say it again. If you go into Venom with the expectation that it is a mid-2000s Marvel movie, then you'll have a good time. Don't expect greatness. Expect Daredevil era Marvel. Only director's cut Daredevil.
Not that much better.
Slightly better, or perhaps if you want to be nicer, that era of Spider-Man, that era of X-Men, it's not Marvel Cinematic Universe level. It's its own insanity. And it's insane at times. The first one more so than the second one. The second one drags in places, but
the insanity pulls its punches for the ratings, unfortunately. For the PG-13.
Okay,
exactly. Yep. And Woody Harrelson as Cletus Cassidy.
Well, that's perfect casting.
I mean, come on, yeah.
Ian, when is the X-Men cartoon coming out that you're anticipating?
X-Men 97. That's soon.
That is soon, yeah.
Because I saw some toys in Target yesterday for it.
Did you?
Wow.
Yes.
I've seen shirts in the wild. I've seen a bunch of other stuff. I don't know if it has an official release date yet, because even here on Wikipedia it said early 2024, and we're in 2024. Yeah. So
I want to say I was listening to a toy show the other day, and they were talking about the Marvel Legends 97. That you're right, Chris. I have seen X97 toys in the stores, but these new Marvel Legends 97s, they've yet to come out. They just went up for pre-order not long ago. I swear he said March or April.
That sounds about right, mainly because, and we talked about it on previews, that they are doing a prequel comic to X-Men 97, a 4-issue miniseries written by Steve Fox that's supposed to fill the gap from where the 93 series ended and where this one begins, essentially. So Steve Fox, writer of Dead X-Men and Dark X-Men, with art by Salva Espin, will be working on this preview comic, and great artwork for the cover.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, obviously that's
Sure looks it.
obviously that's Todd Knock artwork for the cover, but hopefully the interiors will be that pretty when we actually get to the inside of it. But yeah, if it's early 2024, then anytime before spring, I'd say that counts as early.
Levy-Poo, I'm looking forward to your reaction.
Excellent. Before we move on, by the way, for me birthday, I did get two things of note that are comic related that I wanted to share.
He's 40, folks. He's 40.
The deuce, you say?
The big 4-0. I got this excellent Spider-Man shirt that I can hopefully unravel.
Oh, that's
look at
nice.
that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's classic.
Good
That
old-
is classic.
That's from, I think that's from a Spider-Man 100, I believe, if I remember correctly, that
That looks
pose.
like Romita.
Yeah,
Even
you
has the
may
neat
be right.
Spider-Man stamp kind of in the bottom corner there.
Yeah.
Yes,
Nice
it
shirt.
does. Yep. Yeah. Very, very, very nice. And it goes very well with the X-Men shirt that I got, all old school not too long ago. But this is of note. I received a comic book adaptation of the.
I know those.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah. This is from a while ago, to say the least.
1990s, I want to say.
I think you're right about that. Even looking at it here,
company.
it's actually by Chuck Dixon and David Wenzel, and was produced by Eclipse Books.
Okay.
So looking here, it had a price tag of $5 back in the day, and copyright is 1989.
Oh, in
Yikes.
the 80s. Okay.
That makes sense.
17, baby.
Yep. Yeah, and the artwork on the inside, just sharing, a little bit of it. Nice classic line work, and really gets the story across well. Yeah, looking forward to checking this one out. So this was the one bit of comic book stuff that I got. But I did also get Super Mario Wonder for the Switch, but haven't gotten to crack into that quite yet.
Ben has that. I haven't played that yet either.
Yep.
The other media I would report, if I may. So when I had COVID for a week in January, you do two things. If you're me, you read and you watch TV and movies.
Sure.
Of course.
So Shane especially appreciated this. So I just decided, I'm going to watch just a whole mess of Star Trek.
Nice.
And I watched several original series episodes that I hadn't watched in quite some time. I especially enjoyed watching the Menagerie again. It's been a long
Always
time
classic.
which is a classic. It's a long time since I watched that one.
One of few episodes of original Trek I have actually seen
There you go, Murd.
in my childhood. Yeah.
And thinking about how intimately tied that is into Strange New Worlds, it was really thrilling to watch it because I hadn't watched it in many, many years. So that was a lot of fun. And then I went back and I watched most of seasons 6 and 7 of Deep Space Nine.
Oh, fantastic.
And I realized it's funny how our viewing habits have changed. So we're all accustomed to streaming and whatnot and shorter series. And I realized, you know what? I never saw this episode because there were like 25 of them. And I never realized there was some that I had missed. But watching a lot of them again, in short order, just reaffirmed how tremendous that series is.
Yeah.
And it may be, except for maybe Twin Peaks, it may be my favorite television series of all time. Because every time I come back to it, it's like, oh, I'm like, these are all my friends. Like, this is home. I love this show. And the serial approach to it, the way they develop character, I'm so glad that they were not doing episodic television because it built this whole world. And the nuance of relationships is so well delineated and well acted because they're working together on a 7-year show and they're building these characters. It's still, for me, the most exciting Star Trek out there. And you guys appreciate this. I watched the Lower Decks episode.
Yes.
They go to Deep Space Nine.
Fantastic.
Which was just a hoot and a half.
So that's everything about that series is
I'll tell
really
you what,
fun.
Deep Space Nine still like Chris just stated for him, that is really my favorite overall Star Trek series from start to finish. But
Yeah.
Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds, man, you can't go wrong with either of them. Lower Decks just blows me away with what they cram in there. Some of it's forced, but subtly, but so many Easter eggs and so many good
Oh God.
connections that they make. It's brilliant.
And what was fun was that you had Nana Visitor and Armin Shimmerin playing Kira
Yeah.
and Quark.
Yep.
It was great to hear them. What was interesting though is that Armin Shimmerman sounded slightly different because he didn't have the teeth and the mask on. So
Yeah.
his voice
Yep.
was a little bit. It
Yeah.
was still obviously him, but it
Yeah.
was just interesting hearing that difference. Basically,
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun.
And Prodigy will be coming back soon
Yes.
on Netflix. Netflix is its savior, so it will be coming back very, very soon, and I cannot wait to see what that second season is going to be like.
And
Me
I'm
either.
assuming it's going to be in June, but I can't wait to see the next season of Strange New Worlds. What a show! Oh,
Discovery comes first because
Discovery comes first.
As its final season. I still have half a season of last season to watch. I'm going to get through it. It's just not an immediate priority for me. But yeah, really looking forward to that. And yeah, agreed on Strange New Worlds. It's some of the best Trek we've gotten in a long time.
Yeah. I just want to cover a couple things that came across multimedia because they're products.
Sure.
One of them is NECA produced Bat-Communicator from 1966. It's so stupid and was way overpriced, but it's hilarious. The antennas go up and down. It's just silly. For those watching, you saw Mutt and Junkyard in the beginning, which are G.I. Joe classified.
Yeah.
They're just a phenomenal set. So glad they finally are getting to some like secondary, I would say like second release characters. Like there was the initial release of Joe characters. This is like the next round from oh gosh, what was the Revenge of Cobra cartoon kind of time frame that they're coming out. And then I was not going to get these suckers because they were too expensive.
famous last words.
But here is George Clooney Batman, and McFarlane produced an entire set of Batman and Robin figures.
Oh,
and
wow.
the Build-A-Figure was to Mr. Freeze. These are some great looking figures, even though the movie was not the best in the franchise. These figures
Boy,
look
you're being
awesome.
nice.
But even better, I got them for like 40% off because Target
I'm
had some
glad.
kind of sale. I pre-ordered them all. It was worth it for 40% off. I would not have paid full price for these, but a good deep discount was.
So is
was-
Mr.
was
Freeze
well worth it.
Schwarzenegger?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's got Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy, Robin and Batgirl, Batman, and then you build the pieces to make Mr. Freeze. They really were nice figures. Blown away that out of a movie that was probably the worst in the
are nice.
franchise, they are the best Batman movie related figures I think we've ever gotten.
That's funny. Yep.
And they look a little bit better in person than what they do in that picture that Ian has.
Those are impressive likenesses.
Yeah, McFarlane Toys has been actually sort of like upping their game lately from a lot of the toys that I've seen. Yeah,
I'll tell you what, their Superpowers line is my jam. I never had the Superpowers figures growing up, but this reintroduction of Superpowers with no gimmicks, thank God. I know people like the gimmicks, the spring-loaded stuff. I hate it. I absolutely can't stand it. But they are really doing some incredibly neat things with that line, and they're $10 a figure, $20 for a vehicle. Like, relatively speaking, in today's toy market, they're
That's cheap. Yeah.
and they look spectacular. Are they 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? They might be 7 points of articulation, so they're not overdone like so many figures are. As much as I like classified, sometimes the articulation's overdone. Their heart doesn't stand because they fall over because there's so many joints moving. But yeah, the Superpowers line is really, really hitting it on all cylinders. The one thing that is frustrating is they always seem to have some kind of Walmart exclusive for that line.
of course.
And the last two waves were Black Manta and Reverse Flash. I have yet to ever seen them online or in store ever. And I'm like, these are two major villains in DC, and that's what you give them as an exclusive. And I can't find them anywhere.
I love when Shane becomes frustrated toy hunter.
Oh, it's so stupid. I hate exclusives. So if anybody out there even remotely sees one of these things, let me know.
I'm seeing it for $50 on eBay.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Which is
Wow.
ridiculous.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's not even the Superpowers one. That's just a crazy release.
Got it.
There's ones that are done in the Superpowers vein with the card back and everything, and it's Black Man in reverse. You can't find them to save your life. It's crazy.
While we're talking about toy hunting, Shane, do you want to touch on your current mask mission?
Yeah. So something I have, for some reason, well, I do know why I did it. Years ago, I worked, when I was in high school, I worked at a gas station. And the owners of the gas station were always very good to me. They had two very young boys, one each, because it was brothers that ran the gas station and repair shop. And they had two young sons. I won't say that they weren't poor by any stretch of the imagination, but the boys just didn't have a lot of toys. I had a lot of toys that I really didn't need anymore. I was collecting comic books. I was 17, 18. What do I need with all this stuff? So I gave the majority of G.I. Joe and Mask toys to these two boys. One got the Mask stuff and one got G.I. Joe. And in this day and age at 51, I do sometimes regret it because I would like to have some of that stuff again. But for 30 plus years, I never regretted it because they enjoyed it thoroughly. I would go over their houses for picnics and stuff, and they enjoyed them immensely. So there's no bitterness on my part because I just gave them to them to enjoy them. You know, they're toys. Play with them. I did keep some. Of the Mask ones, I kept Rhino, Condor, and Firecracker, as well as Raven, which is a second series kind of one. But something I wanted to do before I die is collect all of Series 1 again. Because I kind of think that was, I never liked it once that moved into the racing aspect of Mask as much, but I love the regular first series of Mask. So in the early days of post-pandemic, but still not everybody out in the world like crazy, there was a local toy shop in West Reading that I found out was there. Went in and I acquired Gator and Thunderhawk. So two more of Series 1. But I need all the villains and Bolt. Well, my good man Chris here was at a comic shop recently and sent me a picture and saw Switchblade at this store for $18.
Oh, wow.
So I jumped at it. So now I'm going to, Chris picked that up for me, and I'm going to find a couple pieces that it's missing to kind of complete that, and then look for Piranha and the Boulder Hill playset, which that's probably going to be the most daunting. And I think it's a Jackhammer or Cliff Jumper's a transfer. It's got to be Jackhammer. The Bronco, that's part of Venom. The name escapes me at the moment. But those are the only other ones I'm searching for. And then I'll have Series 1 complete, and that's all I'm going to go for when it comes to Mask. But there's also talk just last week of a new Mask cartoon in development. So that would be exciting if that comes to fruition.
New toys, Shane. New toys.
I know. But you know what? If they came out with figures that like classified like for them, yeah, I'd probably get them because they would look really cool. But to me, the thing about Mask is more so than even G.I. Joe, you need the vehicles. And the vehicles at a large 6-inch scale won't work to make all of them the way they did. I really, 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 if they come out with toys, I really want them to stick in that little like 3 or 3.5 inch scale with the toys in the right scale, the vehicles, so that it's manageable. If it's anything larger than that, it just, there's no way. It just wouldn't work in my mind.
Sure, yeah.
But that would be exciting if a new cartoon came out. That's a property that is, I know they've tried it in comics a few times, and it's never taken hold, but that's a property that's well overdue for a relaunch.
Now, if Murd can get his, what is it, Knights of the Shining Light?
Knights of the Magical Light.
Magical Light, then
or
everything will be
Visionaries.
complete.
Yeah, Visionaries.
Yeah, well, they did try at IDW to relaunch the comic, but that
didn't stick either. And I think Hasbro owns the license to that, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think when they were planning to do their little Hasbro cinematic universe, that was one of the properties they were planning to include.
That's what I thought too.
That didn't get very far either.
And to me, you just had Macfarlane Toys release these stupid page punchers, they call them. They're 3-inch figures, 2 packs with a comic book. Now that's all well and good, but I have no interest in this little dinky thing with a comic book. In fact, the comic books they put in with them, I've already had or read. It just doesn't grab me that way. But Hasbro licensed out to Macfarlane G.I. Joe and Transformers. So they just announced and pre-ordered G.I. Joe Page Punchers, which come with 2 little figures and 2 comic books, and Transformers in that same format. They're $17 for a 2-pack. Okay, not a bad price, but I just am not interested. I think it's one of the silliest things that they do. But my thought is that Hasbro, as they're continuing to have problems and laying people off for various reasons, I think that they're testing the waters to license out more of their properties rather than produce them themselves.
Sure.
So I could very easily see a world where they license off Mask, they license off Visionaries, they license off this, that, and the other thing, except for like Marvel and Star Wars, because those things are things they license from Disney. I could see them very easily licensing some of these things out that they own, even G.I. Joe to that to a certain extent, and see what happens with them, so that they become more of a licensor than they do a production house.
I mean, there's even been some talk of Dungeons and Dragons getting sold off to another person, another company. So yeah, I mean, you never know with licensing how that's going to turn out, or perhaps even, wholesale selling certain properties off to interested parties, one way or the other. But I will say, as Murd and I pointed out on this last previews, if Biker Mice from Mars can come back, like. Masks can certainly come back in one form.
Yes.
Like, come on.
I'd argue Mask deserves it more.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, but I just see that, and they're already testing it with giving the G.I. Joe license to Super 7, which is a little bit larger of a figure and a smaller 3 3/4 version. But they're a little bit too expensive for my taste for what you get from them.
But by the way, I did find that Superpowers.
Yeah, there's the Reverse Flash.
Wow, look at that.
And
yeah.
Black Manta looks really good too, but boy, I'll be damned if I've ever seen them.
It's literally not even on eBay, so I doubt it ever even came out, to be entirely honest.
Well, I've seen people have it on their walls on toy forums and groups that I'm part of on Facebook and in different videos, so I know they're out there somewhere.
Right.
Black Manta came out before Reverse Flash. Some people say that they're starting to hit stores now after all these months with just backed up product from the holiday, but boy, oh boy. Our area does not seem to get this stuff at all.
Yeah. I see one website selling it for $57.99. So
yeah, it's crazy. There's no way.
That is going to be a hard no for me, but thank you very much.
$10, absolutely. Any more than that? Nope.
Yep, exactly. Oh boy. Well, one thing that is a hard yes from me, however, if it actually plays, come on, you. Don't, come on.
Oh, what a tease.
Right out the window.
Where's my strings here? Air harp, sweet air harp.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And it is time once again for Muddle the Murd here on Comic Geek Speak, our long-going trivia segment. And Murd has more information on how you can attempt to muddle the Murd.
Indeed, I do. First Muddle the Murd of the year. Well, folks, Muddle the Murd is it's a trivia contest, and it's another opportunity for you, the listeners, to take part in what we do here on the show. If you'd like to take your crack at muddling the Murd, what you need to do is come up with 3 comics trivia questions, one about Marvel, one about DC, and a third question about comics from some other publisher. They also need to break down chronologically to 1 question about comics pre-1970, 1 question about comics between 1970 and 2000 inclusive, and a third about comics post-2000. You need to be sure to include the answers to these questions. And we ask that you make the questions not too detailed and obscure, nothing about like the background details in panel 3, issue 4 of NFL Super Pro. And try not to ask questions about ads and letters pages and stuff like that. Just story content preferred. So come up with questions that meet these guidelines, 1, 2, 3 of them. Put them into an email to comicgeekspeak@gmail.com with Muddle the Murd in the subject line, where Ian will find them and move them into a special subfolder of our inbox. And when the time comes, the time being Every time we do Comic Talk episodes and other odd times besides, he will dig out your submission. When it comes to the top of the Muddle the Murd queue, he'll ask me your 3 questions, and if I answer all 3 of them incorrectly, then I am duty and honor bound to mail you a fantastic prize at my personal expense. And what is the prize for which you would be playing tonight? Well, courtesy of Mr. Eberly and his peregrinations to local comic book shows, I now have a small queue going of prizes, and the first of which will be going to the first person to muddle me after this evening, and I'm holding it in my hands right now. It's Howard the Duck Essential, Volume 1. It's several hundred pages of content here. You have like 400 plus pages of the early adventures of the duck trapped in a world he never made. It's the first 16 issues of Howard's 70s solo series, plus the first annual and several Man-Thing appearances.
Nexus of all realities.
Howard the Duck.
Excellent.
I knew it, Shane.
Yes, it's better than the movie. Trust me.
I believe that. That's not
I
hard.
saw that thing in the theater. I had the novelization.
I saw the theater too.
Oh,
I think I saw that in the
Steve
theater
Gerber's
too.
take on the duck is definitely better.
mm-hmm. Well,
Leah Thompson.
this Muddle the Murd is from Timo Pekonen. Hello, Murd and friends. I'm 0 for 2. Third time's the charm. Only time will tell. We begin here, 1939 DC, Superman #1. Superman, champion of the oppressed, the physical marvel who had sworn to devote his existence to helping those in need. Earlier on the same page, it is said that as Superman grew older, he learned that he could hurdle skyscrapers, leap an eighth of a mile, raise tremendous weights, run faster than a blank, and nothing less than a bursting shell could penetrate his skin. What can he run faster than?
Well, the obvious answer seems to be locomotive.
Is that the obvious answer that you are going with, sir?
It could be an equivalent like a freight train, but I'm going to stick with locomotive.
Okay, so he's being a stickler here. He is looking for exact wording. So I will have you try one more time because you are in the right area.
Faster than a blank. Okay, well, if it's not just locomotive, what else in that family would have been available to Siegel and Schuster by way of analogy in the 1939? Freight train is the only other thing I can think of.
The correct answer, a streamline train.
Streamline train. Okay, yeah.
Run faster than a streamline train.
That was not coming to mind, but that's fairly sticklerish, but I mean it is from the highly seminal and iconic and important Superman #1. So
Indeed. Yep.
the bursting shell bit I could have said for not the streamline train.
Yep. Yeah. And somehow that's not the thing that's that's memorable. Faster than a locomotive. Like that rolls off the tongue. Faster than a streamlined train. Not so much.
Yeah.
All right.
It might have already been dated by the time that opening spiel to the TV and radio shows came along.
Very possible. Let's head over to 1993 Marvel and X-Men 2099 #1.
Wow.
The Gathering.
That is a comic book that I have read.
Excellent. I am unashamed to say that I am most certainly a fan of X-Men 2099, or as one of you accurately called it, Image X-Men. Very true. I think it's just as good or perhaps even better than Spider-Man 2099 and Doom 2099. I will now quote Serpentina's description of a character who is a syntho-percussionist that used to play with the Armageddon Choir. He creates rhythms by moving through vibration-sensitive webs of sound. They're generated by the resonators floating around him. Each of his choreographed movements trigger another sound variation. What is the name of this character?
We're looking for a real name or a code name?
We are looking for either a real name or a code name.
Okay. The only one that I can think... the only one of the X-Men characters I can think of. I think he might have been a member of a band, but he was kind of the POV character, if I'm remembering correctly. He was kind of like the Kitty Pryde. Welcome to the X-Men 2099. Hope you survived the experience kind of thing. Skullfire.
The correct answer is Metalhead.
Oh, shoot. Okay, I do remember Metalhead, yeah. Timothy Screaming Fitzgerald was Skullfire's real name, but that doesn't help me here and now.
He was just looking for either Metalhead, also known as Eddie. I don't know if he has a last name, but those were his names, not de plume in X-Men 2099.
Yep, he's like the giant skeleton guy. He doesn't have a last name. It's a mononym.
It's like Madonna.
Exactly. And let's go with one last question here, and we are going super duper modern with this one to 2023 Titan Comics. And Chris, you're going to be a happy man. Conan the Barbarian #0.
Man. Yeah, I'm kind of on the cusp of having to mail something to, I'm guessing, Finland if I don't get this right.
Oh boy! Well, he didn't include his address on this one.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that earlier. Yeah, well, when you're submitting your Muddle questions, do tell us where you're from.
Yes,
well, I'll email you later to get your address if you don't include it. But it does make it easier on us if you just are optimistic and include it in your submission.
Finland.
All right, here we go. I'm looking forward to a fresh start with Conan. Titans seems like a good fit so far based on the wonderful artwork I've seen from Rob De La Torre and the detailed storytelling I've read from Jim Zub in the Free Comic Book Day issue 0, looking for lands beyond. The story begins in the land of Chimeria, where 3 villages have just been invaded and destroyed by the Aquilonians. There we go. Aquilonians. The next stop for the Aquilonians is a remote fortress in Cimmeria where a young Conan steps up to the plate and defeats these invaders. What is the name of the remote fortress? The fortress has also been mentioned in previously published Conan stories.
I'm sure it has been, but since I read very few Conan stories published at any point in time, yeah, I have no idea. Jotunheim.
Chris, any guess?
Full book, but I don't remember the name of the fortress.
The correct answer is Venarium.
All right.
Thanks for all the good times. You guys are a great team, and that is from Timo.
Thank you,
right.
sir.
Thank you.
You finally got your Muddle, Timo. And you also got the Essential Howard the Duck, which will be winging its way to you just as soon as I acquire your address and scrape together the funds necessary to mail it to you, because I get the feeling it's going to be transatlantic in any case. Still, that's the risk I assume as the Muddle Master.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
We all do our duty for the show in different ways.
Yep. And super duper happy to get the Muddle in there either way. So there we are. Alrighty, let's get into some comic talk and comic conversation. And Murd, since you've been talking, how about you go ahead and talk some more about stuff you have been reading?
Be delighted to, Ian, especially since I think my stack is by far the shortest of any. I'm still focusing on stuff from 17 years ago. I will say, first of all, here, a non-comic book reading, but a personal milestone for me. And it's kind of connected to your birthday present, actually. I finally finished reading Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
Nice.
excellent.
Some 35 years after I first attempted to read it. Yeah, I got a little Valentine paperback edition of all 3 books in the series when I was like 8 or 9 for Christmas, or maybe even 10. And I tried reading them then, but I got about 50 pages into the Fellowship of the Ring, and I just bottomed out. It was just a little beyond my reading level and my attention span at that time. So I put them aside, didn't pick them up again until the movie started coming out 20 plus years ago, if that doesn't make you feel old.
Right.
And I managed to get Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers read in time to see the Peter Jackson films, but I wasn't able to read the Return of the King in time to watch the movie adaptation of that. And after that, the urgency just wasn't there, and I didn't get around to reading Return of the King until just now.
Wow.
I picked it up on Christmas Eve, And just last night I finally finished it, and yeah, so I've read that trilogy. I can get that hole punched on my geek card.
Yeah.
It's good for an extra scoop at Baskin and Robbins, I guess. So yeah, so that's the thing that I've read, and I'm glad I finally got that.
Yeah, very cool.
Okay, as far as actual comics, I've only got two things here to talk about. One of them, since I always bang on about how Bizarro was my favorite character in all of comics, naturally I was thrilled and said so on the podcast here when it was announced that the beginning of Jason Aaron's heralded run on Action Comics was going to be with a Bizarro arc. And that's what I've got. I've got the first part of that story, which is entitled I, Bizarro. It's Action Comics number 10. Written by Aaron with artwork by is it John? John Timms. And it's part of what I guess DC is calling their new Superman Superstars initiative. I guess they're serious enough about getting all-star talent onto the Superman books that they actually designed a logo to show just how serious they are about that.
Yep.
So this is Aaron's debut. And we were all looking forward to this. We knew that Aaron, with all the good things he's done with Thor and the Avengers over the years, he'd be a great one to take on Superman. And I am not dissuaded from that view, having read his first issue here. It's entitled "Hello, Cruel World, Hello," and let me start by saying that it contains third-person omniscient narrator captions.
Oh.
Which is something that's become a relative rarity in superhero comics nowadays. They used to be ubiquitous, but hopefully Aaron is going to make them cool again. And it opens with Bizarro. We were promised going into this a take on Bizarro that no one had ever seen before, a more dangerous, frightening Bizarro than had been seen before. And Aaron starts off by, introducing a new wrinkle in Bizarro's powers and nature. This is something that was kind of hinted at for DCU fans. If you read the opening issues of Jeff Johns' current volume of Justice Society of America about a year ago, like issue number 2, I think, there's a throwaway fight scene where some members of the JSA are repelling an invasion of half a dozen Bizarros from Bizarro World. Jakeem Thunder is telling his Thunderbolt to zap them. Thunderbolt tries and reports back to Jakeem, "Sorry, sir, but the Bizarros appear to be invulnerable to magic," which makes sense because Superman is vulnerable to it. Jakeem doesn't want to hear it, but apparently Jason Aaron was listening because that's the angle he's taking here. If Superman is vulnerable to magic, then Bizarro, as his exact opposite, might have a certain affinity for it. And so, in the opening scene, we see Bizarro blundering into a well-known DCU locale, Xerox, the Sorcerer's World, which is it's kind of the... if it's not the origin of magic in the DC universe, it's where a lot of sorcerers like to go and hang out. It's like Axis Mundi for all things magical in the DCU. And Bizarro, having somehow lost Bizarro World and having nothing better to do with himself, he just kind of almost instinctively goes to Sorcerer's World, picks a fight with a bunch of wizards, and instead of being harmed by the magical energy they throw at him, he absorbs it all and turns himself into a kind of super wizard. And then, again, since he doesn't have much better to do with himself, since he apparently has lost Bizarro World, he doesn't know how to get back to it, it could no longer exist as far as he knows, he decides he's going to devolve on his second biggest motivation, beating up on Superman. So he heads to Earth, and the rest of the issue is him putting into act this plan of vengeance he's worked out to take out his grief and his anguish on Superman. He's gathered a bunch of magical artifacts, and he, in the skies above Metropolis, he just sort of intuitively, instinctively knows which artifacts to gather, which hand gestures and incantations to mutter, and he casts this elaborate spell in the skies over Metropolis as Superman tries in vain to reason with him and or to stop him. He ends up causing himself to explode, basically turns himself into a cloud of dust, with seemingly no effect, but then... by the end of the story, it's revealed that he's basically turned himself into something like a psychic virus, which was Grant Morrison's take on Bizarro in All-Star Superman, interestingly enough. And he has infected all of Metropolis, and he's basically mutated the whole populace of the city into just crazed, destructive Bizarro versions of themselves. He's created a little beachhead of Bizarro World right in Superman's backyard. And even Superman himself is not entirely unaffected. So here we are, Bizarro is trying to teach Superman what it's like to feel alone and rejected in a world that is the opposite of the way that you think, where everyone hates and reviles you. So here, Metropolis has been into Bizarro Town, USA, where everyone's a Bizarro. They're running around laughing hysterically and wrecking the place, and they all despise Superman and refer to him as Bizarro number 1.
Mm-hmm.
So Bizarro,
Fantastic.
the super wizard, has got his revenge. And this is all just in part 1.
Yeah.
That's how part 1 ends. So this could go some interesting places. Now, as a Bizarro scholar, if there can be such a thing, I'd like to throw in also that this is kind of reminiscent of one of my favorite Bizarro stories from the Bronze Age. It was Superman numbers 305 and 306, written by Marty Pasco, art, of course, by the great Kurt Swan, where Bizarro, similar to this story, thinks that Bizarro world has disappeared or has been destroyed, and he comes to Earth he wants to try and get the duplicator device to make a bunch of new Bizarro friends for himself in his grief, and he passes through the tail of a flying comet on the way there. And that's how he first got his Bizarro powers of like the freeze vision and the fire breath and the just backwards versions of Superman. So this is basically the same thing, except Aaron is taking the idea of Bizarro in a very Silver Agey device of flying through the tail of a comet and getting weird powers. Instead, he goes to Sorcerer's World and gets this whole new sorcerer's power set that gives him the ability to remake reality in his image. It's a heck of a start for Aaron's run here. Like I said, I like the way he's telling the story. His takes on the members of Superman's supporting cast that he uses. They sound on point. He's even got Bibbo and the Ace of Clubs in this story.
Yep.
So there are people who have been away from Superman comics for a while. This would be a good opportunity for you to jump back on and see what one of the recent masters of the medium does in his first crack at the Man of Steel, and who is, in my opinion, one of the greatest members of his rogues gallery, the Idiot of Steel, Bizarro, who is here cast as the Wizard of Steel. And let's not forget, it all makes sense, too, because this version of Bizarro was created by the Joker when he was wielding Mr. Mix's Pitlick back in the circa 2000.
That's right.
The Emperor Joker story. So
Yep.
it makes sense that he would have a special affinity for magic and would soak it up like a sponge and be able to do cool, frightening stuff with it. So, yes, Aaron is definitely showing us a side of my favorite character we've never seen before. And
I read this knowing that you were going to talk about this, Murd, because by pure luck, it got on DC Infinite like yesterday, so I made sure to read it before we got started. This is my favorite panel in the entire thing, where Bizarro does Bizarro Zatanna speak, which just was beyond fantastic.
It's backwards beyond backwards. It might be the most Bizarro thing that's ever been done.
Yep.
But thanks to that, Superman is actually able to hear Bizarro explain himself, and the reader too are able to hear Bizarro explain his current state of mind and his current agenda without having to rack their brains to what's it for? By speaking backwards for a sentence, Bizarro spares us all that pain. So
exactly, yeah, yep.
So, major plaudits to Mr. Aaron for this. This was a very good Bizarro story. If I had a complaint, it would be that Bizarro uses the title of the arc is "I Bizarro," and if there's two words that don't belong together in a sentence, they are Bizarro and the first person nominative personal pronoun. But so Bizarro does actually use the word "I" several times in the story, but that's all intended. I mean, it's supposed to show the mental evolution of the character as he absorbs all this sorcerous energy, I guess.
Right.
No, I'm a stickler for Bizarro grammar. I can conjugate Bizarro verbs like with two hands tied in front of my back. But I'll give you a pass here, Mr. Aaron. Great start to the first arc of what I hope is going to be a great run of a to basics widescreen Superman adventure.
Wholeheartedly agree with that, and the artwork too. Tim's artwork is reminiscent of Francis Matterpool with the color wash that he's utilizing, and it's a very streamlined effect, but really gets the point across of the artwork and the story being told in masterful ways. So yeah, I'm really in on this one, and very happy that it lived up to expectation.
Yeah, I would wish that Mr. Tim's this is kind of just a general complaint of mine about how everybody's been drawing Bizarro for the last couple of decades, but I wish that they made his skin look more like it was carved out of rock instead of just kind of looking like a dead person's skin.
Sure. Yeah.
White skin and black fingernails. So we're really going Bizarro goth here with the way Mr. Timms is coding the Bizarro look. But anyway, so we'll read more about the City of Bizarros in future months. I think the next part of that should be coming out pretty soon here, maybe even next week.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Only other comic I have here, because I wanted to go out of my way to pick something recent and relevant. And this is something that one of our listeners on Facebook, I think it was Ryan Drost, I apologize if I'm misattributing that quote, but somebody said that they really enjoyed this first issue and thanked us for shouting it out on previews. It's this comic from Massive Publications, Zorro, Man of the Dead.
Oh, I just got that. I haven't read it yet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, here it is, Chris. It's written and drawn by one Sean Gordon Murphy, the person who gave us the Batman White Knight series of kind of Elseworld stories and also Punk Rock Jesus. So this is his take on a modern day Zorro. And it's an interesting notion. It is set in the 21st century. And it stars a direct descendant, it is heavily implied in the story, of the original Zorro, Don Diego de la Vega, who still lives in a town in Mexico that has been named after the original Zorro, La Vega. And as the years have gone by, it's fallen under the sway of a different kind of tyrant. Instead of Spanish colonialism, now the major evil plaguing this community is drug cartels. Like the whole place is under the thumb of the poppy growers, and they rule with an iron bloody fist. And the main character is the namesake of the original Zorro. It's a modern day Diego de la Vega, who witnessed his father, obviously also a descendant of the original Zorro, who was participating in a historical reenactment of the adventures of the original Zorro for a Dia de los Muertos celebration, and the drug kingpins show up and express their strong disapproval of the revival of the legend of this folk hero. They expressly forbid citizens of La Vega to talk about Zorro, so they kill this guy who's portraying Zorro in this little holiday play in front of the eyes of his two children. Like his very young son, Diego, is he's heavily traumatized by the event. He doesn't speak for 20 years afterwards. He's taken away by like the local squire, I guess you'd say. He's like the who lives in the old Spanish castle off to one end of town, and he just kind of lives there in isolation for 20 years. Meanwhile, his sister grows up to become a driver and runner for the very same drug kingpins who killed their father, and she kind of hates herself for it. But then one fateful day, she's sent on a run to the old castle where her brother is being raised, and the drug kingpins go ahead and kill the squire, the gentry, the don who's been raising the young Diego de la Vega, and right before the kid's eyes, and that kind of snaps him halfway back to sanity. He's been training in fencing with the old man out there at the Castillo, and now he decides that he is the new Zorro. He's aware that he's living in... he recognizes his sister when he sees him, and he knows that there are evil men afoot and that they've killed his real father and his surrogate father now, and he's hot for revenge, and his sister Rosa doesn't know what the heck to make of any of this, but her brother, kind of, who hasn't spoken in 20 years, suddenly is speaking in complete sentences, and he's half deluded that he's living back in the 19th century of Mexico. He claims not to know what a car is. He calls it a sorcerer's contraption and won't get it. And so they set out on this quixotic quest for revenge against these modern day oppressors of this couple centuries old Mexican town. And that's about where things end. The new Zorro fights off the drug kingpins and makes some powerful enemies in the process, and that's where the first issue leaves it.
I'm looking forward to reading it.
Yeah, it's Ryan or whoever. Well, I'm sorry, Ryan, if I'm giving you credit for something somebody else said, but he thought this was a great way to kind of bridge the gap between the classic setting, the historical setting of Zorro's adventures in 19th century colonial Mexico, and the present day. Here's a character who kind of believes he's living in one time when he's actually having adventures in the present. And I kind of hope that Murphy does more. It's a great concept he set for himself here. I hope that I'm kind of surprised that we're seeing all of this through the point of view of the sister. I think it would be more interesting to see it through the lens of the deluded young man who is playing the role of Zorro here. To just kind of see what he sees and hear his distorted inner monologue. Because that would make things even crazier and even more interesting to the reader, I think. That would make things like 50% more fun if we could do it that way. As though it's still, the script is surprisingly tame, but it's still strong. Given that this is the guy who gave us punk rock Jesus, I'm surprised that he actually portrays the Catholic Church as a positive presence in the community. Although I guess compared to murderous drug lords, it's even the Catholic Church looks good. Yeah. No offense meant, Shane. I'm actually glad that he's giving the Catholic Church a fair shake here. I'm glad about that. The artwork. Somewhere between, if you liked what Daniel Warren Johnson, another three-named auteur, is doing on the Transformers comic, the art, I would say, is somewhere between that and Mark Buckingham. It's pretty good stuff, and the color palette is suitable to the setting, I'd say, especially the opening scene, which is set during that fateful Dia de los Muertos celebration 20 years ago when young Diego's father, in the Zorro costume, is murdered by the drug lords. Yeah, it's got real potential. I think it's only like a 4-issue miniseries to start with, but it's a good way to bring the character somewhat up to date with the times. It's a good what's the word I'm looking for?
Tribute.
It's a good compromise between a character who like other historical fiction characters like Sherlock Holmes seem kind of inextricably bound up with the original time and place of their stories, to kind of keep one foot in that period and while still bringing the character into a more modern day setting.
Makes sense.
Very cool.
Excellent, Murd. Great field report.
Yeah.
Good timing on this too, with a new Zorro series also being available on Amazon Prime, I believe.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about that.
Yeah. Yep.
I hadn't heard anything at all about it. I didn't know it had been made.
I didn't either. Somebody I saw it on Facebook somewhere and made a couple of comments about it, and everyone's saying I should watch it. So
yeah,
sit down and watch it.
I'd be curious what you think, Shane, because I've heard some people love it, other people not so much, somewhere in between. So I'd love to see where you fall on that to see whether that's worth checking out. Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to check that out. Actually, that sounds like something I could watch with my folks.
Sure.
Excellent. Fantastic. All right, Shane, any recent reads on your end?
Yeah, I will start with something I don't have here in hard copy at the moment. It's buried back there, but I finished it off of digital. I did finally finish Human Target by Tom King.
Very good.
Phenomenal story. I have to say the last issue was probably my least favorite, only because what you think is going to happen happens. I'm not so sure I like where the characters land, but that's the point of the story, is some of how they land. But it's still
a fan you are of the Bwahaha League show.
Yeah,
maybe the way he played Ice wouldn't sit well with you.
Yeah, a little bit, but
it doesn't with me.
Okay.
It's a black label story, Shane. It's a black label story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. I still really enjoyed it. The artwork was phenomenal all the way through. It just wove an incredible story, and I loved visiting these characters in a different way. It was a lot of fun. And I'm not kidding when I say from issue 1 all the way through the last one, anytime that you heard Chase talk, I just heard the one actor from Johnny Dollar through and through every time. This just, I don't know, 1950s, 40s kind of vibrato came through in my head, and it was just an enjoyment, a little bonus for me to read it that way. But it was a lot of fun to read, so I do highly recommend it. I'm anxiously awaiting, God, someday when they put out a hardback of it, so I can add it to my hardbacks of Tom King stuff I have over on the shelf.
Well, so far they have 2 hardback volumes. They haven't done a full
I
one
know
yet.
that's not right.
They will, though.
They will.
Yeah, and that's what I'm waiting for too, as well. Quite frankly, is something that has it all together in one complete package. Yeah.
Yep. So that was really good, and I was glad to finally finish it because I was laboring and putting it off like crazy for some reason. Um, then I reread issue 1 of Wonder Woman and read issue
fantastic.
2 and 3.
Fantastic.
I have 4 and 5 over on the chair to read. I was trying to get them all done before tonight, but that didn't work. Quite enjoyable. Very different than what I was expecting from a Wonder Woman story, but that's part of the fun of it. I still think Tom's stuff reads better if you can read it in a chunk.
I agree.
Because I went back and read issue 1, so I could read issue 2 and 3 very easily. And I'll read 4 and 5, and I've heard there's some major dichotomy that happens between issue 5 or 6 that some people are really reeling about. I'm curious to see what that is, if that's a thing.
Okay.
And maybe I'm misreading something on Facebook, but who knows? So that was really good. Artwork's gorgeous in this, by the way.
Yes, it is.
And it's by maybe Samper. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't look it up. Good.
I've read 1 through 3 as well, Shane,
Daniel
and I love just the whole conceit that Wonder Woman is accustomed to being treated and
Revered.
seen in a certain way.
Yeah.
And how a political situation has totally upended her status.
And all of the Amazons.
Yeah,
really.
on Earth and in the United States. It's the kind of story Tom King is just built to tell.
Yeah. All the while, at least in these first 3 issues, I really think she herself is still written to be very regal and caring of man.
Well, did you get to the issue yet where she spends time with the little boy? That might be issue 4.
I don't remember a little boy.
Okay, Shane, knowing you will remember it when you read it.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's great scripting by King.
So next I went to G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero 301, 2, and 3.
Oh, excellent.
Nice.
Excellent.
Excellent. Part of my problem with past G.I. Joe comics, and this is after Devil's Due, because that ended with World War III, which I
Really
thought
good
was
story.
one of the best
Yeah,
G.I. Joe
really good.
stories ever. And the artwork was fairly well done in that. Things after that, artwork wasn't always so great.
No.
Covers look great, but
No.
the artwork was bad,
No.
so I never picked up a lot. The artwork inside
Oh,
these
this guy's
books is
terrific.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's by Chris Mooningham. Larry Hama's writing it, of course. Absolutely gorgeous, and it really takes. I don't know if it literally continues the story from what came up to 300.
I believe it is.
The previous iteration.
Yeah.
And maybe it does. I'm thinking it does, but there's some strange happenings with Cobra.
Yeah.
And not what I expected, but for some reason it works in here. And part of that is the artwork is
Art is
just
stunning.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. So I'm really excited about this book, and I suspect this is a standalone story in this universe where they're just producing new G.I. Joe books that Larry Hama's writing, and that's great.
Yes.
Totally enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my understanding of it is that it's just him continuing his Real American Hero series,
Yeah.
right? Which is bounced from different publishers.
Which frankly, like what a strange thing to think about in the comic books, where so many properties are stuck in one place, and they either stop publication and you never hear from them again, and then they start up somewhere else, and then that somewhere else starts fresh, but then might republish the old stuff or whatnot.
Sure.
Like, it's such a white whale for G.I. Joe to have, in essence, a continuous publishing from
in
this
various
form. In various forms, various publishers over the years. It's really something else.
And just go ahead, Shane, please.
Well, no, go ahead. Yours is probably more relevant than what I'm going to say.
Oh, nonsense. I was just going to say that you mentioned the World War III story, which is not considered Hama canon because he didn't write those stories.
Right.
They're very much based on what he did, of course, like everything else. But was that Devil's Due or Image?
I'm pretty sure that was Devil's Due.
Okay, so there was a trade of that whole story,
Yep.
which is probably long out of print. I don't have it anymore.
I have it on the shelf.
What top flight G.I. Joe story?
Yeah.
Really well done.
Yep.
So if you
phenomenally
ever see
ended
that
that
trade,
series.
grab it if you're a G.I. Joe fan. If it's out of print, probably, but really good.
Yeah, and I've heard rumors. What I was going to say is I've heard rumors that this current iteration and company are going to reprint the Marvel stuff. I kind of hope that's true.
Yeah, I've been hearing the same rumblings, and quite frankly, it wouldn't surprise me just because it's Image, so they have the means.
And I have the G.I. Joe Complete Collection hardbacks that came out a few years ago.
Yep.
I have 1 through 7. I've heard that there's 9 total. I wish I would have gotten them because what I see online is that they're outrageously expensive.
Oh yeah, good luck getting those.
But I've never even seen them really, even on eBay. So I have 1 through 7, and I'm happy I acquired those because some of those were really hard to get. So then I haven't caught up with Void Rivals, but that kind of started this next round of books that I've read, with introducing the Energon universe out of the Image world. And I have issues 1 through 4 of Transformers, which is a very interesting retelling of the origin, somewhat similar to how the cartoon and comic portrayed it, but different at the same time. Instead of Megatron coming right away, you have Starscream as the big Decepticon, and he revives a couple people. You don't have all of the Transformers, you just have Optimus, and I think it's Cliff Jumper, and Bumblebee makes a little appearance, and a couple other characters come through, but it's not everybody all at one time. It is a little bit of a slow build, which is interesting. Spike and his father are in it, but his Spike's father is very different from what we're used to. Much more apocalyptic threat warning kind of person, like a doomsdayer, I guess you could say. And
so he's a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, they really don't take kindly to the Transformers and think that they're all evil kind of thing. But it's very interesting. Artwork's very well done in this too. Some of the black lines are a little bit too heavy for me in my taste, but it still looks really good compared to a lot of other Transformers things I've seen. This is beautiful. So that's really interesting read. Of note, and no spoilers here, issue 2 has something very spectacular happen that leads into one of the other books. So if you read it, kind of just take note of it. It's fairly obvious, but you could easily miss it too if you're just reading it and flipping pages. But issue 2 definitely directs into some of the other stuff that's coming out. And then after that was Cobra Commander #1.
Just got that, haven't read it.
Oh my God. This is absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, I can't wait to read it.
I am blown away, not only again by the art, very well done. I'm not even going to show you pages, Chris, because you will want to read this, and I am very curious to see what you think.
Oh, thanks, honey.
Everything they pour into here, because some of what they do, if you would have told me that what's in this book is in this book, I'd have thought this is going to be the silliest thing in the world, and it's kind of stupid. It is brilliant.
Okay.
I love it.
I just got my shipment today, so
oh my
it's in the
God.
file.
It is, as it should be in some ways, it is a little brutal because, they're villains, so Cobra Commander's kind of a bad guy. And he does some vicious things in here, but there's a bit of a flashback sequence that is extremely interesting.
Ooh.
And then it really ends on an interesting note, and I am very curious what happens. To me, it seems like some of this takes place before Transformers. Some of it doesn't. Then Transformers sort of happens, or maybe we're not sure of that yet. There's not a really cohesive thought in here because you could do it another way. But things that happen, again, in Transformers lead into other things. Again, brilliant, Chris. I am really curious what you think about this. When you read it, you will have to text me and say, oh my God, or you're crazy. And then that brings me to the last one, which is Duke #1.
Oh, I read that. Superb.
Absolutely superb.
Excellent.
Brilliant. Artwork is phenomenal in this too. I recognize some of these other characters that they throw in here that Duke infiltrates Mars Industry Building, and there's some characters in there that are characters that G.I. Joe fans will recognize down the road. Very interesting. And again, I'm trying to be spoiler free because if I talk about details from Transformers, it's going to lead into things that happen in both of these books. It is just interesting this Energon universe that they're building, and am having a grand old fun time reading these books.
What I especially found affecting about Duke 1 is one of the books I was going to talk about, so let's do it now, is that, again, without spoiling, but it's Duke, the character, but they really go into that, Duke is a highly professional, highly skilled soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, and that's always the way, but this is a grittier Duke.
Yeah. And it's grittier for a reason. Yeah. It's grittier because something happened.
Yes. And what I always like when they take a character like this, whose whole life has been, he submitted himself to a way of life and to a system that he obeys.
Yeah.
And now, because of certain events that have occurred, that's all out the window.
Yep. And he's not being told the whole story either, which is frustrating.
So it's great to see a character like that put now in a very different circumstance and how he's going to have to cope with that. So first issue was wonderful.
Yeah. And there is, in this first issue, there is a character that long time G.I. Joe comic fans should pick up on. That is very interesting. And I did not expect this character, not a major character in the G.I. Joe verse, but very interesting to me that they chose this character to put in this first issue of
Duke. Any G.I. Joe fan
should pick up on
it. Take Shane's word on Cobra Commander, but Duke 1 is well worth reading.
Yeah. Oh God. Cobra Commander one, that I read that one first. Thank goodness I did. Not would have been bad either way, but boy, oh boy, that one blew me away. Absolutely blew me away.
Nice.
I almost feel bad because I was conversing with oh my God, let me see who it was. I'm blanking at the moment because I'm so excited about the books. Brad Pinder. I've been conversing with him about the G.I. Joe books over Facebook Messenger, and he's like, "Oh my God, did you read this yet?" I'm like, "No," and then I go and read it, and he's right, it's brilliant. He said, "Have you read Transformers 2 yet?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Oh my God, you have to read that. Just read it thoroughly." So I did. And then he said, "Did you read Cobra Commander 1 yet?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Oh my God, you're gonna love what they put into this," and he's absolutely right. Again, if you would have told me what's in it before I read it, I would have said you're crazy. That's going to be silly. It is wonderful, top-notch work being done right here. And what I last said to him, and I'll say here, is I almost feel bad to a certain extent because I'm enjoying these books so much more than almost all of the superhero books that are out there right now. It's not that it's bad. What I'm reading superhero-wise is fine, but this really is energizing.
Don't feel bad, Shane. It's in your wheelhouse. It's hitting your sweet spot.
Not to put a pun on Energon, but energizing a franchise and some books that really have a good leg to stand on for a long while if they do it right.
But please put a pun on Energon. We demand it.
Yeah, Ian loves a good pun. Come on.
Exactly. Bring it on, Shane. Bring it on. Oh man! All right, I'll step in with some of my recent reads, and then we'll head over to Chris. So starting off, 'tis the season, and this wound up on the DC Infinite app at just the right time. I read How to Lose a Guy Gardner in 10 Days. The new Valentine's Day anthology one shot. That came out from DC, and it has a whole bunch of books in it, and it includes the main How to Lose a Guy Gardner in 10 Days book that Kenny Porter and Nick Robles put together on the writing and the art chores, and this one is about Vicky Vale deciding to put together an article on what it's like to date a superhero. And she's basically trying to do a hit piece on how it's not a good idea and, how it's a mistake and all that. And of course she contacts a bunch of big superheroes. Nobody answers, but Guy Gardner does. So she winds up going out on a couple of dates with Guy, and of course it fails miserably, but by the end Vicky learns that Guy does indeed have a heart, and that there might be something there other than the showmanship that is always on display from Mr. Guy Gardner. I really enjoyed this one. My favorite of the bunch was actually the next one in the series, which was Red Tornado in Robots Are Red, Androids Are Blue. Written by Aaron J. Waltke with art by Ivan Shavrin. And this one, it's Valentine's Day. All the main Justice League heroes have dates or other things to do. So Red Tornado is left on the Watchtower to watch. And Batman leaves him with his new AI that he created, which Batman, talk about puns, at one point says it's, kind of my Bat GPT. So that happened. and Red Tornado starts having a conversation with the AI about his past loves, and Red Tornado decides to go back down to Earth to try to rekindle a spark, only to then find out that she has found somebody else, but there might be a spark in this new AI. And that's pretty cool, and they may actually wind up investigating that a little bit further in DC Comics if anybody picks up on this plot point. But as a Young Justice fan, I'm just happy to see Red Tornado anywhere that he shows up.
Sure.
And this was very much within character of that. Shane, you would love the Booster Gold story.
I'm sure I will.
It's called Golden Pairs. Written by Danny Lore, with art and colors by Ted Brandt and Rose Stein. And for this one, Booster Gold is promoting a new dating service where he has been tasked to be one of the matchmakers. And
what could go wrong there?
Exactly. When a date goes horribly awry, he winds up going back in time to try to figure out what exactly went wrong and tries to resolve it himself.
What a good use of time travel.
Oh,
right.
Absolutely.
Oh, God.
Are any of you familiar with Marine Marauder as a character?
No.
Yes.
Okay.
I think she fought the Outsiders.
Yes.
Amazing.
Well, she is the foible in this story, where it turns out the guy that Booster is trying to help on this date is actually set up with Marine Marauder, and she's just looking to rob the place and get riches and spoils for herself, and it goes from there. It's hilarious. The art is great. It's not your typical superhero art, but it really lends itself to the story. Really good touch in that. The Flash story is quite literally a flash in the pan, but it's Marguerite Savage on the writing and the art. The art is superb, and it tells the story about how when Barry went on his first date with Iris, Barry tried like 5 times in order to try to get the date to be absolutely perfect. Again, using time travel for horrible means. Stop doing that, Barry. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, whenever Barry does that, man, bad things happen.
Exactly.
You want Flashpoint? Because that's how you get Flashpoint.
Thank you. Thank you. He keeps reliving the date over and over again to try to get it to be better than the last time.
Okay, well, I would appreciate the Groundhog Day-ness of it, though.
Oh yeah, but by the end he's ordered food 12 times and he's he can't stomach it anymore until eventually he goes to Jay Garrick and seeks advice, and Jay's like, look, sometimes a bad date is a memorable date, and you'd be surprised as to how many times that may lead to something special. So he just lets the date go as it was, and we move on from there. One of the more heartwarming in this was there's a Constantine story. You're welcome. Called Never Been Kissed. Written by Alex Gaylor with art and color by Derek Charm. And we go back to when John Constantine was a kid. And he's trying to get his first kiss. Everybody else around him has already gotten it, and him and his best friend are trying to devise ways of making it happen. As the story progresses, we essentially find out that the best friend has a thing for Constantine's sister. And by the time the story is over, it's a very sad scene of Constantine standing at his sister's grave, and also the ghost of his best friend along there with him, basically saying, "I really did love her," and him agreeing with it. So it's a very heartwarming story, and that piece just brings it all together 100%. There's a Plastic Man.
Well, one shot.
Oh my God, it is. This was 85 pages of anthology, which I'm all for. Plastic Man story by Dennis Hopeless was a lot of fun. Essentially, just Plastic Man trying to find himself someone who he can quite literally bounce off of, and I'll leave it there. Art and color by Baldemar Rivas. And this one's just great. We were talking about Wonder Woman earlier, and this is totally within the Wonder Woman bounds of her personality. This is called Say Yes to the Mess. It's written by Brendan Hay with art by M.L. Sanapo, and Wonder Woman's telling one of her gal pals that it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a villain, whether it's a hero, whether it's a random schlub on the street. Whenever Valentine's happens, everyone's trying to have Wonder Woman be their Valentine. And she devises a plan. Rather than say no to everybody, she just decides to Costanza it and say yes. And she's got all these like 12 different people lined up, including Gorilla Grodd, mind you. All pining after her, and they essentially fight it out while she decides to go have a Galentine's with her friend instead. It's a really cute, silly story. And we wind up with Nightwing and Batgirl on a date night, written by George Mann with Leonardo Rodriguez. They're trying to actually have a date night while Stephanie and Cassandra monitor crimes going on. But of course, crimes happen, and both Nightwing and Batgirl have to get in the costume and basically have a date night, and in the end it's them on a couch eating ice cream and just enjoying the night. This was really, really fun. It's a good deviation, quick stories, and like I said, it's like 86, 87 pages worth of story. So if you have the DC Infinite app, that's no extra cost right there. It's just freaking there for you to read 85 plus pages of content, and otherwise, I'm sure you can get it for relatively cheap from your comic book retailer or whatnot, because I guarantee you it's going to be sitting there because it's a Valentine's anthology and not everybody buys that. So wait for it's a little bit cheaper and then enjoy it.
Ever the savvy consumer.
My copy's coming in my next shipment. I just looked.
Excellent, Shane. Yeah, you're
That'll be fun.
It was a lot of fun. The other things that I got to check out, I know that you guys discussed on the quote unquote founders episode, Ultimate Spider-Man #1.
Oh, I just read it today.
Yeah,
brilliant.
I read it through it, and it's probably one of my favorite Spider-Man stories in the last 10 years. Outside of the one that we all love, which is Zdarsky's Spider-Man. Like this is right up there with Life Story.
Similar vein.
It's very similar to that. Obviously I've explained it on the show before, and anybody who listened to that episode knows that it's Peter Parker starting off as Spider-Man later on in life. So he already has a family. There's some major changes to lore with Ben and J. Jonah Jameson and whatnot that you'll get into. Stupendous story. Check it out if you're a fan of Spider-Man in any way.
Let me tell you, I got my shipment today, and I'm like, you know what? I know Ian's going to talk about this, so I made a point of reading it before the recording.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. I mean, you all know I'm a lifelong Spider-Man fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm home.
Oh yeah.
I'm home.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And I'm not going to spoil much. Ian already really summarized it nicely, just without spoiling. But what I loved about this story was, just like with Lifetime, everything is very familiar and reassuring, but it's also something very new.
Yes.
And they're taking characters you love, and they're putting them, in very different situations. But at the same time, it is such the essence of Spider-Man.
Oh my God.
The other thing I want to say, and this story made me realize how much I miss the concept of a little bit older Peter Parker, who has some wisdom, who is in a relationship. As much as I, adore high school Spider-Man, college Spider-Man, I've grown tired of the perennial 28-year-old Spider-Man.
Right.
Which was what they did after One More Day, which I really didn't care for at all.
Yeah.
And the way they like have Peter, like, you know, like a guy clearly in his older 30s, later 30s, with a beard. And is it Mark Cicchetto? I'm mispronouncing his name. I'm sorry.
Cicchetto, I believe.
Yeah, amazing artwork. He draws a beautiful Mary Jane who could be a real person.
Yes.
I agree.
And everything about this issue, I put it down. I was reading while eating my pasta with dinner. I was just over the moon with this book because, as much as I love Spider-Man, I haven't been very engaged in a lot of in stories over the past several years, hit or miss. You know, I'm in and out. This is like way up here.
Oh,
and it's such a wonderful setup issue. And by the way, it's mostly just characters talking.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's totally engrossing.
Oh, absolutely.
Hickman just understands these characters to their essence.
Yes.
And he's using that and putting them in a very different environment. And the way he uses Ben, I mean, it's moving. Like it's a great book.
It really is.
Great book.
And along those lines, my friend, the other book that I got a chance to read in the Ultimate Universe is Ultimate Black Panther #1, written by Brian Edward Hill, Stefano Caselli on the artwork. And you got me there because Stefano Caselli is one of my favorite artists, period. He's doing such a good job on the pencils for this book. And what you said about the essence of Spider-Man is essentially true about this Black Panther. You as a Black Panther historian, I cannot wait to see what your take on this is because this is the Ultimate Universe. It's a different world. So we have Wakanda. It's sectioned off like it usually is in the comics, as T'Challa is feeling a little bit antsy, as are other Wakandans, wondering whether or not they should try to introduce themselves into a world. However, in this world that we are dealing with, Khonshu and Ra are at odds with Africa, and they're trying to attack in order to make their presence known. Khonshu, obviously, we know what's coming with that. Of course. We're going to have Moon Knight involved one way or the other. Ra, a whole other story. But the way that they use two characters in this, in particular, Killmonger, who does show up, and I'll just call her the Weather Witch.
Okay.
Because that is essentially how they introduce Storm in this, is perfect. And I'd say this is a blend between Marvel Cinematic Universe Black Panther and main Marvel 616 Black Panther in a lot of ways. By the time this issue is over, you'll understand even further what I'm talking about, Chris, because there's some story beats in this that very much mimic the MCU, and there's story beats that mimic 616, but they're a new and different flavor that I think you're really going to appreciate. So,
yeah, I didn't order that, so I'll be sure to pick it up in my LCS.
Definitely.
How do they play Killmonger, Ian?
So Killmonger, he's being used as the outsider in a similar way to how he's been used in the past. However, in this in particular, he's an outsider of Wakanda who is taking the fight to Khonshu and Ra, while Wakanda has not yet decided what they are going to do about that. So he's essentially almost being treated as, I wouldn't quite say a freedom fighter, but quite possibly that might be the direction that they're building him in. We only get a little bit of Killmonger in this first issue, but it's just enough for me to know that he is being used as that outside force, whether for good or for bad, we'll find out. But I'm impressed with it so far. Yep.
All right.
Going back to Spider-Man for a minute. I have a PlayStation 5 now.
Oui.
And my mission in life for the past couple of weeks has been to begin the sojourn of the Insomniac Spider-Man games. And I touched on this a little bit on previous episodes, but I'm now about 90% done with the main story of the first Spider-Man game. I am going in order. I'm going to do Spider-Man, then Miles Morales, then Spider-Man 2. That it has to be done that way. And the storytelling on this, even if you're not a video game guy, I'd say you could probably even sit your butt down and just watch like all the cinematics online, and you'd get yourself a nice mini Spider-Man movie out of it. The character choices for this, because it's an alternate universe, because it's not the main 616, they could make some choices on characters. They decided to make Mary Jane a reporter rather than a model or anything else. So she slots herself into kind of like the Lois Lane character pretty well in this particular take on Spider-Man, which also means there's a bunch of side missions that involve having to be stealth while she's going around trying to avoid, being captured as she's investigating things and passing along word to Spider-Man. This story also includes Miles Morales pre-Spider-Bite. So we get his introduction along with his family's introduction, and when this game starts, Peter Parker is working for Otto Octavius at his lab as they're trying to develop new means of artificial limb technology. So we can obviously tell where that's going and where it's eventually going to wind up. But you get Doc Ock in this game, you get Scorpion, you get Rhino, you get Electro. Mr. Negative is actually one of the big villains.
Wow.
In fact, he is probably, I'd say, as much of the main villain as Otto Octavius is throughout the story of this game. But everything
isn't Kingpin in this one too, the first one?
Yes, Kingpin starts off in this one. Kingpin is the first baddie that you face. So essentially, he's your introduction to the game. He's how you learn how to play. And you take him down, and then there'll be missions throughout where you get to take out like Kingpin's goons that have been set up in different areas, and you can take them down. But overall, this gets Spider-Man. And the choice of outfits that you have, I'm currently running around in the Dan Slott advanced outfit, the one with the green eyes when he got like the spider-esque. It looks like a regular spider suit, but it's advanced with armor back when there was like Parker Industries. I'm running around the game in that, and the lighting and the green around the eyes and the green around the illuminated spider on his chest is just absolutely gorgeous. And they got Spider-Man. Like it period. Like this is one of the best, most fun I've had playing a superhero video game ever. And
wow.
Well worth checking out. And I know that Spider-Man 2 is even that much better, as they introduced a symbiote. There's tag team between Miles and Spider and Peter Parker going around that I know, and obviously there'll be Venom to deal with and a bunch of other stuff. Oh, and one more thing. Mayor Norman Osborn.
Oh,
yeah.
Boy, what can go wrong there?
Exactly. So excellent. So glad I finally got to check this out. I've got like two more things, one of which I checked out the first issue of, and I'll bring up the image here so that hopefully Chris can get his patented ready. There you go. I checked
read this
out
too.
Yep, issue 1 of Al Ewing's Immortal Thor. Now, Thor is one of those characters that's kind of hard to get right. You have to sort of like do a tightrope act where you have to have story, but you also need to get that Shakespearean-esque feel to it.
I agree 100%. That's why I don't care as much for the later Thor movies. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, and you're grounding it in humanity and doing your best to have Thor feel as at home in Midgard as he is in Asgard. And this starts off. I'm way behind on my Thor reading, so obviously where I came in on this, a lot has happened. The Rainbow Bridge is asunder. It's in pieces. Thor is stuck on Asgard, and there's a Warriors 4 instead of a Warriors 3. They've added a female to the mix in the Warriors. But as the story progresses, there's a story going on with the Frost Giants, and then after that happens, Loki shows up and has a present for Thor, and that is rebuilding the Rainbow Bridge, which was thought to be an impossibility. But Loki has found a way, and Loki rebuilds it, and Thor gets to go visit Midgard and whatnot. But at the same time, Loki is in the background saying, I wish you knew what was coming because I just did this. And that's essentially what sets up the story from here for this run. Al Ewing continues to be one of my favorite writers in comic books. He gets Thor. I am interested as hell in what the heck is coming next, and the artwork by Martin Coccolo inside, with assist by Matthew Wilson, all great. So yeah, well worth.
I would add to that, Ian. I mean, I read this a couple months ago, but what really stuck out for me was he really captured the joy Thor experiences when he's among humans on Midgard.
Yes.
Like there's a great shot of him just smiling as he returns to Earth that he's among. Because one of the great themes of all Thor comics is, he is, because his mother is Gaia, he really is as much a created man, a being of Earth, as he is of Asgard.
Yes.
And, there's always been that tension between Odin and different stories about that. But they really, in this story, if I remember correctly, because it's been a while, but they really establish that Thor belongs as much here as anywhere else. That it rejuvenates him really to be among humans on Midgard. Yeah,
him sitting down and playing chess with people randomly was another great like one shot panel, which just says how invested he is in the people of Earth, and that he is as at home there as he is home in Asgard.
I always go back. We talked about this in our Thor Silver Age Spotlight some years back. There's a great Kirby issue where he stops into a drugstore to get a root beer float. And we talked in the Spotlight, but it's the essence of that great Marvel Silver Age where they try to make things like this could be in your world. And then they have all like these, hip teens show up with Stanley giving them voices, and they just want Thor to tell them stories about Asgard. And then he's like, I have no coin of the realm. And the guy's like this, the soda fountain guy's like, it's on the house. I'll call it the Asgard special. But it's that kind of spirit that just makes Thor such a great character.
Absolutely. Yep. One more that I got a chance to check out is Ghost Machine is the hot new thing. And it has a whole bunch of, the greatest creators in comics on board for it. And they put out a one-shot, which essentially was a one-shot in the style of like those Marvel one-shots where they, do a little bit of story from like all their upcoming books, and they tell you, what to expect and whatnot. And they did that very recently, and I got to read this one-shot earlier today. And the books inside of it, there's a bit from Geiger in it. Geiger is a story of a man living in a post-apocalyptic United States. He's kind of like a Ghost Rider character where he's been given these nuclear abilities, and it's his mission to essentially seek vengeance on those who deserve it. All the while hoping that there is a cure for his sickness in one way or the other. One of the other main characters in this universe that they're setting up, this superhero, if you want to call it universe, is the character of Redcoat, which is a immortal British man who became immortal in 1776 and has been living ever since, and still wears the red coat of the British to this day and runs around as Redcoat. And Benedict Arnold is another one of the Immortals that he's come across. He's also dealt with Albert Einstein, Annie Oakley, and tons more in his lifetime. And they're telling that it's going to be, further stories into his entire lifetime being told. And this is Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch. So
that sounds like a book for me. My God.
Yeah. Benedict
Arnold, one of the most fascinating figures of the American Revolution.
Yep. Absolutely. Some of the other ones that were included in this, Rook Exodus is a new book by Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok, set in the 24th century. It's about Rook, who's a man trapped in an artificial planet that's collapsed into chaos. And Rook must scavenge an escape vessel, but he wonders, is this a world worth fighting for? It's very much a space epic. He kind of looks a little bit like he's wearing like Blade Runner meets Star-Lord in his general costume. So looks like it could be pretty cool. Hornsby and Halo was interesting as well. That looks like it's going to be like kid gods is the best way to describe it. Like these two kids are on the baseball field facing each other, neither one of them aware fully that they're developing powers. And you see like the girl pitcher throw one at him, and like it breaks his metal bat. And then the kid is doing his best to try to still win the game and whatnot. And we'll learn more about their histories as that goes on. Hyde Street is a very much a Stephen King-esque story about a street that's always there, and it's got a carnival on it, and you may wind up part of the carnival whether you like it or not. So that's Hyde Street. But the one that I'm looking forward to the most out of this is the Rocket Fellows. Rocket Fellers. It's a sort of like a Fantastic Four-esque family from the future who's forced to go back to 2024 in order to ensure that their life as they know it will be able to continue. And it's done in a very familiar style that just has a lot of heart and personality to it, and really seems like something that I would be interested in the end. And it's Francis Matapool. So you got me there. Like on both artwork and story, he really gets the point home. I don't know if that'll come up because it's on my but yeah, good, nice, heartwarming family from the future story essentially. And Hornsby and Halo is by Peter Tomasi, with art by Peter Sneckberg and Lauren Hansen as well. So yeah, Ghost Machine has a bunch of stuff coming out that's all worth discovering. And I'm gonna have to pay attention to all of this because Yvonne Hayes has stuff coming out of this. As I said, Tomasi, Brad Meltzer is involved, Jason Fabok, great creators, all looking at what their next stuff is going to be. And I'm there for it. So check out Ghost Machine if you have not already. And one quick note, I did read the first 3 issues of the new Superior Spider-Man. Just because I was talking Spider-Man and I might as well bring it up. It's fun. It's Dan Slott and Mark Bagley, so you can't go wrong with that. And it's finding a reason for Superior Spider-Man to exist again. Let's put it that way. A villain that we were unaware of that Otto dealt with while he was Peter comes back into the mix, and the only way for current Peter to deal with that is for Otto to help him in the process. And at first, Otto's just feeding him lines. Of course, the funniest part is that he goes to the base that Spider-Man used as Superior, that's in the middle of the ocean, and all of his henchmen have just been sitting there for the last couple of months. It's like playing cards and waiting for Superior to come back. But Peter comes in the Superior costume and has to pretend to be Otto as Superior in order to win them over and get a device from them. But shockingly, Otto Octavius is going to try to get back into the head of Peter Parker. Whether or not that happens or not, we shall see, or whether he gets his own clone body, who the hell knows. But I enjoyed the first 3 issues, and Spider Boy is a part of it too. And we get a side story in the first issue of Spider Boy dealing with the Superior Spider-Man, because again, he's a self-insert character that's like similar to Sentry, always existed but got erased from everybody's remembrances. And this is one of the stories that, quote unquote, took place back then when Spider-Boy was already established. And we even get to see Dan Slott's Fantastic Four show up. So She-Hulk and the girl in the Thing outfit and like and a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, Sharon.
Yes. Yep. Well, no, I don't know if it was Sharon, actually, because it may just been...
This is the one whose pink-haired head stuck out of the thing. Yeah, okay. That's
okay.
Miss Thing of the...
Gotcha.
Of the Future Foundation.
I'm dating myself.
There we go. Yep. Yeah. Miss Thing.
Yeah, I remember Sharon Ventura too, Chris.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. She Thing's always around every now and then. But yeah. And so that was a lot of fun. So Doug Superior Spider-Man. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's a good read. And Chris, the floor is yours.
All right. I'll do a kind of a lightning round because I have a lot. It's getting late. So, Shane, first of all, this is what I was talking about. Wonder Woman number 4.
Yep.
All I'll say is, you wish, and after you read it, you're going to be rolled out of your house on a gurney. All right. Okay. So that's that. I just got my shipment today, so there's things I'll read that I'll talk about next time. But I just wanted to point this out because we just mentioned Thor. I was thrilled to get this back in my library.
Ah.
Now you talk about someone understood Thor. JMS is legendary. And I don't use that phrase lightly. Run on Thor with Olivier Coipel.
Yep.
For me, after there's a lot of great eras of Thor. Obviously, Lee Kirby, Simonson, Jason Aaron. This is right up there. This is thrilling.
Kind of wonder if that's one of the few omnibuses I have.
Yeah, so I was really thrilled to get that again.
Nice.
Now, I like to try like a trade I've never heard of or known very little about. So I ordered Cosmic Detective from Image. Now, what drew me to it was Jeff Lemire, Matt Kint, Dave Rubin as the creative team, and one of the testimonials. Imagine David Cronenberg and William Gibson merging body and soul with Jack Kirby.
Wow.
So it's a gumshoe story. It's like a cosmic noir, I guess is the best way to put it. And look at some of the artwork for this. I'll show you this 2-page spread I have here, like delineated. I can actually manipulate my fingers. Okay. So just look at that.
Oof. Wow.
So I don't want to give away too much. It's just it's a detective who gets involved in a case that has cosmic implications for the reality he lives in, and it lives up to the testimonial. I really enjoyed it. If you like crime noir but you want it merged with like psychedelia and a real Kirby sensibility, like and a new Gods feel, get it. Really, really fun. All right, Tomorrow's. So the latest comic book creator is all about the great Steve Gerber. And I haven't read the whole thing, but I did read, there was a great interview. Murd and Chris knows his name. I think it's pronounced Mary Skrenis. Who co-created Omega the Unknown with Gerber. She was a longtime friend of his. I think they were even romantically involved at one point.
Skrenes, right?
Yes. I knew very little about her career beyond the fact that she was associated with the Gerber and Omega the Unknown. There's a wonderful interview with her about her whole career. She did a lot more writing than I was aware of in both companies. A lot of great stories about the Marvel 1970s bullpen, sort of like a lot of the great Phase 2 creators like Jim Starlin, Gerber, of course. Oh, God, I'm just terribly brain farting. Who did Conan with Roy Thomas? I'm shaming myself.
Barry Windsor Smith.
Barry Windsor Smith, thank you. Terrible on my part. Really fascinating interview if you're interested in like the history of Marvel in the 1970s and just learning about, one of the few women working in mainstream comics at the time. Comic book creator, issue 33, fantastic. We were remiss, or at least I was remiss. We didn't talk about the passing of one of the greatest inkers in the history of the medium, Tom Palmer. And Alter Ego number 184 from November, I forgot to mention this in the last comic talk, is a fantastic retrospective on Tom Palmer's career as an inker. He also was a skilled penciler as well. And, of course, he's well known for his work with Gene Colan, especially on Tomb of Dracula. He also did a lot of John Buscema and Avengers. He's all over the Marvel universe, and for me he's one of my all-time favorite inkers, and they have wonderful retrospective interviews in here with him. Just this issue really emphasizes what an important inker he was, and just I mean he did such groundbreaking work. His Tomb of Dracula work along with Gene Ducolan is amazing. So this is a great retrospective issue on his career. I don't think I mentioned this last time. Forgive me if I'm repeating myself. Did I mention Batman Reptilian?
I don't think you did.
Okay. Shane, have you read this? All right.
No.
So this is Garth Ennis doing Batman with Liam Sharp on art. And it's a Killer Croc based story. And it's Ennis doing Batman, so it definitely swerves in certain directions that you'd expect from him in his irreverent take. But it's still very much a Batman story. And he can't resist. Once in a while, Batman will make kind of like a deadpan, sarcastic comment that only Ennis can really do, that you wouldn't see another writer do with Batman, but because it's Ennis, it works. But he takes Killer Croc in a direction that you've never experienced before, and it's really fun. It's just a good, creepy Killer Croc story that goes in a very, and this is appropriate because the author involved, in a very unsettling direction.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, Reptilians. That came out in trade. It's a black label. Really enjoyed that. Okay, now there's all that. Then there's this. So Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, their latest OGN. By the way, the pace of work they release is amazing, by the way. But Where the Body Was. So I was hotly anticipating this anytime this team releases a new work. And look at the map they give you. So basically, it's all about a town in the 1980s. And there's a body found in the street. And it then encompasses the different people living in the neighborhood and how all of their lives are affected by what apparently has gone on here, and all the different perspectives and how all their lives get intertwined with this situation. I don't want to spoil, but there's a reason why, for me, this is the best creative team in comics today. And once again, they produce an outstanding story, fantastic artwork. Again, it's Sean Phillips working with his son, Jason Phillips, who I believe, who does the colors. Look, for me, there's just nothing better in the medium than when these guys work. So, if you love crime noir, you love mysteries, you love the nostalgia of the 1980s, this is the book for you. Can't recommend it enough. Quick lightning round of new titles I'm reading that continue to be great. Obviously, Nightwing.
Yep.
It's
I'm
Nightwing
woefully behind on
working with pirates. What else is there to say? It's that good. Superman Lost. I've been raving about this. This is Christopher Priest. I just got the last issue, my newest shipment. Magnificent miniseries exploring the trauma of Superman, although minutes on Lois's reality, years in his, where he's light years away from Earth. He's trying to get back. It's Christopher Priest telling that kind of story. Enough said. Shane, once again, the Star Trek comics
I'm behind on that.
are so thoroughly satisfying. Anyone who loves Star Trek, both this and the Star Trek Defiant series, you got to read them. They're wonderful. Okay, this gutted me. So, Animal Pound #1. I talked about the Zero issue. Tom King, Peter Gross. It's, basically him doing a riff on Animal Farm with animals in a kennel who are basically all going to be euthanized.
Yeah, I don't know if I could read that.
Yeah.
It's superb. I mean, I love my dog. I'm a devoted dog lover. This almost made me feel guilty about owning a pet.
Wow.
So that's wonderful. So this is one of the best comics being produced today.
No
World's
argument here.
Finest.
I'm behind on that too.
I've been in and out of this title, but I'm loving the Kingdom Come story.
Yeah.
And just again, it's Waid, who of course co-created Kingdom Come, so he's the best person to write this. But just the attention to detail of that world and now coming into conflict with, our Superman and Batman stuff. Already talked about Duke. Shay mentioned that before. Again, any G.I. Joe fan.
Yeah.
Outstanding stuff.
God,
Captain America continues by the JMS continues to be an enthralling story. Again, as Ian mentioned when he previewed it a couple months ago, nicely jumping back and forth between Steve as before he's Captain America, and certain experiences in the pre-war period that are affecting him, and how those events then tie into what's going on in the present day. It's JMS doing Cap. It's great.
Yeah.
So I tried this Under Heist by the Laphams. So it's a crime story by the Laphams. That's really enough. But it's about this motley crew who are going to try to, it's classic crime noir. People are like dead end lives, down on their luck, bad choices, and the conceit of it is they're going to try to rip off a crew of professional thieves who are in the midst of a heist. And you can imagine where things are going to go from there. So the first issue was really engaging, really enjoyed it. So, Shane, you'll appreciate this. I said, all right, I'm going to try Gang War, the latest Amazing Spider-Man, the regular monthly series, because I love the original Gang War, which was written by James Owsley in the 80s, who, of course, today is Christopher Priest. And my first experience of Priest as Owsley was the original Gang War story and the classic Spider-Man versus Wolverine one-shot. So I was like, I'll get the first issue. And I loved it.
Glad to hear it.
I dropped off Spider-Man after that ridiculous death they did several months ago, because I was like, oh, come on, I'm too old for this now. But, I love Gang War. I was interested by the way they were handling Tombstone in those stories leading up to that idiotic death issue.
That was the strongest part of what Wells was doing before that,
So this is really fun. So it's really, and what's great about it, again, every issue starts with a map showing you which criminal controls sort of fiefdom in New York City, and then the map changes as the war progresses. But again, great writing when it comes, like, they really get and explore the Tombstone character and really make him, like he was originally back in Spectacular Spider-Man, a really engaging and interesting villain in the Spider-Man universe. But nicely weaves in different characters. I'm not going to read all the offshoots, but the main story, really pleasantly surprised by this and really enjoyed it. Am I going to be reading Amazing Spider-Man monthly? No, because after reading Ultimate Spider-Man, there's no reason to read anything else as far as I'm concerned, because that's just the kind of Spider-Man story I want to read now. But this is really good, and I'll definitely finish the Gang War. Okay,
nice. I might peruse that. Just for my love of the first one.
I went into it with like really no expectations. I was like, and I love the first issue so much, Shane. And look, comics off the stands are not cheap. They're five freaking dollars. But I went to my shop and bought all the rest. So there you go. Okay, once again, the Superman title. I'm on issue 9 here. I've just read. Every issue has been consistently superb. And like I've said before, I haven't been a monthly Superman reader in many, many years. At the top of my pile every month. So can't recommend that enough. Now, last couple things. Okay. Now let me bring up something else that is just phenomenal. Okay. Dark Knights of Steel, volumes 1 and 2. This is how you execute an Elseworld. So I talked about volume 1 months ago, or maybe a year ago when it came out on this program, and I loved it. And I was going to try to get the monthly issues to finish it off. I missed one. I said, you know what, fudge it. I'll wait till the next trade comes out. It came out a few weeks ago. First of all, the art by Yasmin Putri, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that name, is just breathtaking. It is glorious artwork. Look, here's Poison Ivy. Like it's the artwork is stunning. The Tom Taylor story. Some people are saying like it's kind of like Game of Thrones meets DCU. That's a good little quick tag. But what's wonderful about it, and again, it goes back to the essence of what makes a great Elseworld. I know they don't use the Elseworld tag anymore, but that's clearly what this is. But it's taking all these characters you love, and there's a lot of them in here, and it's putting them in this very different setting, the essence of an Elseworld, so everything's familiar but yet new at the same time. It's Tom Taylor writing this saga. I could not put this down. And let me tell you, and kind of what Shane was saying before, as a middle-aged man now, I'm not as engaged in not the characters, I love them, but the ongoing monthly stories. I just don't care that much anymore with a lot of them. especially when they get dumb like that Spider-Man issue. But stories like this that are finite, that you read them, then they're over, and they go to the essence of great characters that I love. Nothing makes me happier than that as a comic book reader. Dark Knights of Steel. If you're a DC fan, if you're an Elseworld fan, you got to read this story. It's that good. Last thing I'll mention, my Christmas gift to myself. When I saw this, I had to order it. The Blade, the Early Years Omnibus. Tomb of Dracula. Now, all I'm going to say, because I've read all these stories before, but I wanted this collection. Let me just show you one example of why, to me, Gene Colan with Tom Palmer, we just mentioned, is one of the greatest pencilers of all time. Just look at this splash page, which is one of my favorites from the Bronze Age, is Tomb of Dracula 41. It's just the main characters just sitting around talking about what they're going to do in dealing with Dracula. But the attention to detail, the inking, and the way Gene Colan draws people just sitting there or at rest, the way he draws a sweater, you feel how comfortable it is. His pencils continue to just jazz me every which way all these years after his death. But what a thrill to get an omnibus of all the great early Blade appearances in Tomb of Dracula. And it actually goes all the way up to his great appearances in the 1980s Doctor Strange stories. Ian, producer extraordinaire, thank you. And even the Tomb of Dracula sort of sequel they did in the early 90s to capitalize on the Dracula movie craze, where they brought Wolfman and Colan back. So, great collection. All right, gentlemen, I've shot my bolt. That's enough.
That was so much fun meeting him in New York. I think it was 2006 when we met Gene Colan.
Oh,
well,
my God, yeah.
Well, that's the first New York Comic Con, which we were lucky to get in.
Yep.
Yes.
And I did not leave. Once I heard that there were problems, man, I did not leave.
And I met him too, Shane, and I ordered from him, and he completed it, and he sent it to me, a Howard the Duck sketch.
Nice.
Episode 82 from December 8th, 2005. The Comic Geek Speak conversation with Gene Colan.
Good interview.
Wow.
Yep.
And then it was February of 2006, I think, when New York was.
Yep. I got one last thing to mention, gentlemen, just because we mentioned in passing by pure coincidence, even if it was in jest, NFL Super Pro earlier, and we've been talking Transformers. José Delbo.
José Delbo, right.
Yep. José Delbo, classic artist, passed away at the age of 90 earlier this week. Known for Wonder Woman through the 70s and early 80s. Obviously, the Transformers work that he worked on. I didn't realize that he tried to create... that he did create a series, Brute Force, hoping that it would be a series of toys similar to Transformers after he left Transformers for Marvel, but then everybody passed on the toy line, so it just came and went as a miniseries and was never heard from again. But he worked on so many things over the years, a whole bunch of like World's Finest stuff and Batman Family. What I find interesting is that he did TV adaptation comics of the Monkees, Hogan's Heroes, the Mod Squad, Brady Bunch, Young Rebels, and the Young Lawyers. So,
wow.
Yeah, he had a
Dell stuff there.
Yeah, it sounds like Dell. Yep.
Yep, long illustrious career for José Delbo, and most people probably know him the most for his Transformers stuff, just because it happened, for a decent period of time there during the Marvel run. But yeah, here's to you, Jose. And with that, I believe that is a bolt shot.
Yes, sir.
There's one more thing I wanted to mention. If anybody saw it on Facebook, James DeMatteis posted 2 days ago. 37 years ago today, the Bwahaha era of Justice League was launched, and I began one of the greatest creative journeys of my career. And there's more explanation to that as well. And he posted a picture of the cover. And of course, there's tons of people posting different things about how much they like that series. So I chimed in about that as well and took a picture of the poster I have, the promo poster that Carlene got me as a present.
Yep.
And I took to that New York Comic Con and had them sign. And got a bunch of likes from that. And he liked it on the page and stuff. But that was just a neat thing. I didn't realize it was that early in the year because I started with like issue 6 or something, 5 or 6, and went backward to get the first few. So I didn't get the original one right when it came out, but that's what he posted 2 days ago. So that was cool.
Terrific.
Very cool. Yeah. All right, guys. Excellent, as Chris would say, tonic for the spirit. This was rousing comic talk. Well needed.
This was a tall double tonic for the spirit.
Yeah.
Nearly 3 hours.
Yep. Well done.
And don't forget your admissions for Murd contest.
Yes, that's right. Best of 2023 nominations. Send them in to bestof@comicgeekspeak.com by March 3rd.
Terrific.
We'll be posting the list of the 16 categories to our Facebook supergroup and probably the old forum site too, just for tradition's sake.
Old forum site, YouTube, Threads, Instagram, wherever I can put it, it's going to happen. So we will definitely make that happen. And of course, you make it happen at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. So thank you once again for all your continued support of the show in any way that you give it. And Shane, I believe it is your time, my friend.
Oh, I got to
Time. Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com to send us an email. The address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com. Look us up on YouTube at youtube.com/comicgeekspeak. Send in some Muddle the Murds. We got some more prizes to give.
They're good
Follow
ones
us
too.
on Twitter, like us on Facebook. I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead. What were you saying?
No, just go ahead, Shane.
Yep, indeed we do. And thanks to everyone. As always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
You got it on Wednesday, and it was talked about it going to the volume up. These guys will talk about it, everything that geeks love. From pics to laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read. And comics, movies, games, toys, artists, come! Comic Geek Speak, comic Geek Speak, comic Geek Speak, comic Geek Speak, comic Geek. Uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is Comic Geek Speak.
Rhino?
Thanks for the callback, Ian.
Thank you, Mitchley. Job well done, gentlemen. Job well done.